Okay, today is September 19th, 2017. My name is Joe Todd. This is an interview with Cletys Nordin in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Sir, where were you born?
I was born in London, Arkansas,
London, Arkansas.
on March 2nd, 1925.
1925. Who was your father?
William L. Nordin.
And your mother?
Alta Leona Johnston Nordin.
Johnston.
Johnston. Johnston.
Yes.
Johnston.
Did you go through school in London?
No, I was born in London, and of course we moved around and farmed. I went to a grade school somewhere in Arkansas. It was about halfway between, I don't remember, somewhere about halfway between Russellville and Clarksville in the Lamar area. And I went to grade school there. And of course we moved to Oklahoma when I was 10 years old. And I went to school one deal in Weber's Falls, Oklahoma. Then my dad was a sharecropper, and we wound up on a farm north of Porham. You know where Porham Milk is? At Griffin Corners.
What's the name?
North of Porham.
Okay.
North of Porham, 3 miles north of Porham. The highway goes down through there. And then I finished my grade school there in Conley School, C-O-N-L-E-Y, Conley School, north of Porham, Oklahoma. And then I started high school, Porham High School. And times were pretty tough back in those days. The bus took us to school, and my dad was so up with arthritis, he couldn't work on the farm. Me and my 2 brothers, of course my older brother was a year in front of me in high school, and the younger brother was a year behind. But this Porham High School, my dad says the first hour afternoon was a class. And then after that, we were what they call study hall. We go in the gym and everybody had their books and stuff, and you get your lessons planned. My dad says they don't have time for that. They got to come home and work. So I had to walk 3.5 miles back home, change clothes, go to the field and work until dark. And then we had milk cows. We milked a lot of cows, and we milked cows, and you do that till after dark. Well, there was no time for homework, and I went a year there, and I passed out of the 9th grade, and I wasn't very smart, but I got the message that this is not a good thing to be in, because I'd get a job working for somebody, and they'd pay 75 cents a day, you know, and stuff like that, working on somebody's farm and doing all that. So I told my dad one day, I said, there's a guy in Porham that's going to California, and I've heard stories. I was 16, I guess, or so, and I've heard stories that you can make some money in California. I want to go. I was out in the field working, and he says, "How are you going to get there?" And I said, "This over in Porham, I can ride out there with him for $30. He got a car. Got $30. My dad said, "Well, if you're bound to go, I'll sell a calf, give you the money." So I went to California, and I became what they call, in those days, a fruit tramp. Bakersfield, California, and then north through the fruit harvest and all that sort of stuff. And God, you know, you can make $20 a day picking peaches and stuff like that. So I thought that's a pretty good deal. So I went out there and stayed a season, come back home. I sent money back for my younger brother to buy a car because my mother needed denture work. She had to go to Stigler, Oklahoma for that. So I sent enough money back for him to buy an old car so he could take her back and forth to the doctor. And after that, I'd come home and stay a few months and go back to California. And I'd work out there every summer through the, and one year I worked in a bean warehouse out of Woodland, California. That's just a little bit south and west of Sacramento. And I done everything. I knocked almonds, I picked oranges, pruned plums, every kind of peach you can think of, grapes, cut grapes. The only job I was ever fired for in my life was cutting grapes in Lodi, California. In those days, they paid you, everything was piecework. And you got a row in the vineyard, and there's big white table grapes. And you had to get up there and hold them and cut them off, and then had little lugs about that wide or about that deep, and had tissue paper, and you put the tissue papers in it. You lay those grapes in there until you get about 3 or 4 bunches till it was full. Put your number on the box and just stack them up there. And I thought that was pretty slow. So I get under there and I just go down through there, man, I'm whacking those grapes off, letting them fall on the ground. And I go back and I'm popping them in that boxes. Well, the supervisor caught me. And he said, you're ruining those grapes, you can't ship those grapes like that, you're bruising them and stuff. That's okay. But as soon as he got out, I stopped, and as soon as he got outside, I started that again. He come back and he said, go get your pay, boy, you're done. He fired me, only job I was ever fired for in my life. So I just went across the fence, and there's a guy over there with a truck, and he was hauling wine grapes, I think the name of those grapes there, but anyway, little grapes. And that was a whole different deal, because they just stack them on those boxes, squash them down, and the harvesters do it, leave the boxes stacked. And the guy with the truck come by, the other flatbed, and he was having to get out of his truck, put some boxes on his bed truck, get on there, and then stack them on his truck, get down. So I went over there and I said, you need a helper? Yeah, man, sure do. I said, what do you pay? Penny a box. Penny for every box you load. So I got a job working there, and I loaded grapes, and they were so stacked up, you just squash them down, and they juice all over you, and you had to get out of the field about 3:30 and give them time to get all the grapes in, and your clothes get stiff and jerk and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, I done that, then I moved on north and got into the almonds, and in those days, you had to climb the tree. They were huge almond trees. Big old rubber mallet about that big, and you stood up there and pounded on those limbs. Spread tarps all over the ground, and then you knock those almonds down, get them, rake them up, put them in boxes. But then I picked hops. They make grape wine with hops around Sacramento. About every kind of farm work you could do. Then I got into a bean warehouse at Woodland, and the guys, and I'm talking about pinto beans, dry beans, and all that sort of stuff. They'd haul them into this humongous warehouse. It was about a quarter of a mile wide, half a mile long. Had 1,500 guys work 24 hours a day in that place. They wouldn't hire you unless you agreed to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. You had to agree before they hired 90 cents an hour and time and a half for over 40 hours. So I took the job, and I was driving down from Yuba City, about 20 miles, had an old 37 Ford, drove down there, and I had to get up about 4 o'clock in the morning to do that, and hard back-breaking work. But I liked it, and I was the youngest guy working there. 1,500 guys, and the boss come around and he said, hey kid, he said, I don't know how long you can stand this, but I said, I'll handle it. And about the 3rd or 4th day, he come around and he said, you're a hell of a hard worker for a kid. I said, that's all I know, to work hard and give a man a day's work for his money, and that's the way I was brought up. And he said, how would you like to stay over and work a little extra at night instead of your 12 hours, work another 3 or 4 hours, and then hurry up and get you 40 hours in, see? I thought, man, that's time and a half. So I said, yeah, I'll do that. So I'd work 16, 17 hours a day. And on Monday morning, go down, get your check, and I worked there for 3 or 4 months. And when I told him I was leaving and going back home for a while, the guy said, "Man, you'll do like all the rest of these damn Okies. You'll go back and spend all your money, then you can't get back. So here's my phone number. If you do that," he said, "you call me and I'll send you the money to come back on." He said, "I like the way you work." You know, so anyway, I worked in about everything in California. Lived in the orchard. I bought a little old 2-burner gas stove, a little tent, and an army cot, and I just pitched a tent out in an orchard, you know, and those everything out there was irrigated, and they had those big water sand pipes for it pumps the water in it, and then irrigate out of that, and that's where I take my shower. You go out there and turn the pump on, and it fill that big old tank up there, and there's an overflow about 80, 90 feet in the air, about that big around, and you just pump it up until the water started rolling out of that, and you stand under there and give yourself a shot. Don't get your head in the way and knock you goofy. And wasp, God almighty, the ground was wet and muddy, and wasp climb up your britches legs and all that sort of stuff. But that was life in California. But anyway, I finally give that up, and I never did get back to school.
Now, whenever you were on the farm, what chores you do in the farm?
Farm?
Yes, what chores you do in the farm? What chores did you do on the farm?
Oh, well, I plowed. I had to turn them, you know. I take my horses in a turning plow, and we got a little modern, and we had a three horse hookup to what they call the sulky plow, and it was a double-headed turning, and you could ride it. But my younger brother wasn't quite as strong as I was, so he rode that mostly. But we'd plow the ground with the horses. We farmed with horses, and we won. Of course, like I say, we're sharecroppers. So we'd harvest cotton, corn, livestock feed, milo, millet. We grew sugar cane and make our own sorghum molasses. Had a lot of chickens. We had lots of chickens, had a lot of eggs. And we milked enough cows that every day the milk truck would come by and would put in either 3 or 4 10-gallon cans of fresh milk. They'd haul it to the dairy in Muskogee, which is 25, 30 miles away. And then once a week, my mom would get a paycheck from the Swift company for the butter fat of that milk, and they'd bring us back whey, and we'd mix that with shorts, and make hog feed out of that.
What are shorts?
Shorts. Well, it's the husk off of grain that's been thrashed.
Okay.
You know, it's a husk, and well, it smells good. You mix that whey with, and hogs just go crazy over it. Really makes them fat. But we done that, and of course my dad. The last year we was on the farm, we made I think 8 or 9 bales of cotton. That's after it went to the gin and the seeds was out of it, and then it was baled up, about 500 or 600 pound bales. And we had a truck. There's a big truck come to our place, and after we picked the cotton, we just weighed it, piled it up on the ground, kept it covered up until we got it all picked. Then this big truck come in and they hauled it all to the gin. We could get more for it by hauling it to Muskogee, you know, and it took about 3 or 4 truckloads to get it all up there. Of course, my dad went with them on the last load, and we didn't see him for about 3 weeks after the last load. He liked to gamble, so he gambled our entire crop away before he come back home. And of course, we had borrowed money from the FHA, FHA, well, one of those federal agencies to plant our seeds, seed and fertilizer and stuff. Of course, we still owed that. And we had to start selling our livestock to pay that off. And my mom said, that's all, I'm not going to put up with it anymore. So they divorced. And from there, I moved to Muskogee, went to work for Dunlop Tire Company, changing tires and stuff like that. Just anything I get. Then I took a truck driver's job out of Muskogee. I hauled coal from Henrietta to Muskogee to Munding Flour and Feed. I don't know. They had a mill there. They ground their own meal, made their own feed, all that stuff. And Dunlop Tire Company paid me $16 a week for 40 hours. $16 a week for 40 hours. And Munding offered me a job at $35 a week, but I was working about 15 hours a day, driving a truck to Henrietta, hauling coal. And because he sold potatoes, flour to the cafes, all that sort of stuff, and stock feed, livestock feed of all kinds. And he made his feed. He mixed it, put garnet alfalfa and all that sort of stuff. And I worked for him for a while, 4 or 5 years, 3 or 4 years, I guess. And of course, then California was ringing, and I took off. Then I got draft age, 1943.
Where were you when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor?
Pardon me?
Where were you when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor?
I was in high school. I was in 9th grade in high school, and I remember it playing. The English teacher brought her radio to school, and that morning, the Monday morning, and that's my wife Linda held speech on Monday after Pearl Harbor had been bombed, where we declared war, where they had declared war on Japan, and that was quite an experience to sit there and listen. And of course, I finished that year of high school, and that was in the fall. Then the next spring, I went to California. I started my fruit tramp life. And the funny thing, the first trip out there, this guy I rode that with, he pulled into, he asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, well, I've heard Bakersfield is a pretty good place. So he pulled in there to a little place south of Bakersfield called Weed Patch, California. Weed Patch, California, just a wide spot in the road. And he said, well, you might as well get out here because I'm going west to the coast from here, and what you're looking for is not over there. So he left me there, and I thought, God, here I am. Said, only dummy over here, I know. There's a grocery store there with a bench out on the sidewalk. And I walked over and sat down and had a little suitcase about that long, about that thick, and had some underwear and socks and stuff in it. So I sat down there and I said, I better see where I stand. So I took my money out. I had $1.67 in my pocket. That's all I had left out of my original $30 I left home with, but that I got. And I thought, Jesus, how stupid can you be? You don't know a damn soul, and all that stuff. And here you are, no place to stay and no money to eat on. So I went to the store and asked the guy, I said, where can a guy find work? He said, if you're out here in the morning about 5 o'clock, there'd be a truck pull up out there, and they're looking for laborers. They're, I forget the name of the farm now, but there's a big ranch, they call them ranches, fruit, they had fruit. And he said, they'll be looking for pickers. What kind of pickers? Well, prune plums, about some prune plums, see? He says, messy job, but it pays pretty good. They pay you but a box. So I thought, I'll be out there next morning. But about this time, I'm sitting there, and a big Greyhound bus pulls up in the street, just dirt roads. Turned his air brakes on, and dust flew, and a guy jumped out, and he says, anybody want a job fighting fires? He said, the Sequoia National Forest has got a forest fire up there, and we'll pay you $1 an hour from the minute you get on this bus till you get back. I thought, shit, you got crazy. Nobody gets $1 an hour for working. So I went over and I said, did you say you'd pay $1 an hour from the whole time? Like all night and day? And he said, yeah, 24 hours a day. $1 an hour, 24 hours a day. And he said, I have no idea how long we'll be going, but you just take your chances, see? So, hold me a seat. So I took my little case over to a Tidewater service station. And I said, can I put this over? And he said, throw it in the junk room back there. It'll be ready. And I got on that bus. God, I was gone 21 days. 21 days and nights. And I'd been paid in cash when I got back down there. I had more money than I thought ever existed. Between $500 and $600, you know. Good almighty. So I went over to the post office and wired my mother some money in Oklahoma and stuff. And then I had it made. I just wait on that truck and I'd get on there. Then I just kind of follow them. You know, I bought me some clothes and enough to change clothes. And out there, the humidity was so hot, the humidity was dry. You could wash out a pair of pants and throw them on the line, and the suckers would be dry in a couple hours, you know. Just, and I think this guy was charging me like $4 a night for the room to sleep and stuff. So I just went over to the company store, bought me a tent and a little old 2-burner stove, and I started camping out in the orchards. Didn't have to pay anything for that. But I followed that all the way up north, up to through Sacramento, Yuba City, Maryville, just all over, everywhere there's work. That's what I was doing. And I done that for 3 or 4 years in a row. And then I come back to Oklahoma and went to work for Dunlop Tire Company and trying to look at, the war was pretty well passed me up. Couldn't pass physical and stuff.
And let me ask, when you were out fighting fires, how'd you fight the fires?
Hey, well, guys like me, they give you tools, and we'd go out ahead of it, and we'd cut a fire break, cut the trees down, and take a piece, maybe 100, 200 or 300 yards wide, cut every tree down, rake up all the dead stuff, and pile it on one side where the fire, so the fire could burn that, see? And you clean that up, and sometimes you didn't have time to get it done. The fire would run you off. So you had to move another 4 or 5 miles to start another break, you know? And you work 24 hours a day, buddy, I'll tell you. Well, you know, you just get so tired that you just couldn't hardly go.
Where were you staying? Where were you sleeping? Where were you staying?
Where'd I stay? On the ground.
On the ground.
About every 12, 15 hours, they'd come throw you an army blanket. They say, find you a dry spot right over there. Grab a couple of 3 hours sleep, because we'll be back to wake you up pretty soon. They come by on a dishpan. They say, get over and get some chow. They had the kitchen, and they'd give you 2 or 3 half raw eggs and a piece of burnt toast, you know. And of course, we drank water out of the branches, streams and stuff. And it was cold up in the mountains. But I worked up there until those 21 days, and they pretty well got it under control. And then I went back to the orchards and stuff. But that was really an experience for a kid. Never been around a forest fire, and you give you an axe to cut down trees, and you just cut them as close to the ground as you cut them, and then get as many guys as you could and drag them off. Because you drag them, if the fire was coming from that direction, you want them on that side, because you wanted the fire to hit them, and they'll burn them out and then slow the fire down. Yeah. And they wouldn't jump that firewall, that fire break that you put on there.
When did you go to California?
Huh?
When did you go to California?
When was that?
Yes.
That was, let's see, what year was that? I was 16, I guess. I would have been 1941.
41.
How's that, 41? 1941 or 42. Mm-hmm. Might have been 42, I'm not real sure. Not real sure about the years. Because none of that stuff meant anything then. You know, you just put in your work and get your pay.
What was the attitude of the local people towards you being from Oklahoma?
I'm sorry?
What was the attitude of the local people towards you being from Oklahoma?
Oh, they didn't care. You know, we had Filipinos, and they were, after the war started, they were at high risk getting killed themselves. They looked like Japanese. And boy, you just couldn't hardly stand to be with them, you know. And they finally, you know, Roosevelt finally took up the Japanese Americans in California and put them in internment camps. You remember that, don't you? And I served in Korea with the son of one of those families that was in an internment camp during World War II. And before World War II was over, he got old enough to volunteer and went in and fought with American troops in World War II. Then, of course, he was still in the Korean War. Not James Fennis. And he lived, oh God, what's the name of that town? But it's really the garlic capital of California. It's south of San Francisco, probably 40, 50 miles. And what was that guy's name? Can't remember his name. Yeah, but anyway, he and I become pretty close buddies. And most of the people out there who were natives, they kind of took a kid like me and just kind of kept me under their wing. I guess kept me out of trouble. And one time in that bean warehouse, my job was to pull the beans come in out of the field on a truck. They'd been harvested and they'd been shelled like pinto beans and stuff, and they'd been shelled and they were sacked. And each sack, it was wet and dirty. Each sack weighed about 110, 115 pounds. And these trucks would come in, and my job was to sit there. When the truck come in, I pull those sacks off the side of the truck. The guy driving the truck, he'd get them over there to me. I put them on a conveyor that went up to an area. They had stackers. They'd restack those. If you was the farmer, before the season started, you come in there and you say, I'm going to have 10,000 bags of beans. Well, you'd lease a spot in that warehouse that hold 10,000 sacks of beans. They went about 40 stacks high, like this, and they'd be 60, 70 feet square at the top. So there'd be six or seven guys working up there, and when they got it up where it's go, you had to drag them on, put it on a conveyor belt, and go up there. Well, you had to pull those things off just as fast as you could, you know, and I could wear out a pair of Levi's every 3 days, dragging them down my clothes, you know. You never had to wash them, just throw them away as rags. But I got to be buddies with a good old red-headed boy driving the truck, and he kind of looked after me. And there's one guy in that stacker, he was an ornery devil, and I couldn't satisfy that guy. I was either too fast or too slow. And one time my buddy was in there unloading. That guy he hollered, shut it off. I had to shut the conveyor off. I had the controls and stuff, so I shut it off. He started coming down the conveyor. And my truck driver buddy said, what are you coming down here for? He said, I'm going to kick that kid's ass. He won't do this and he won't do that and all that sort of stuff. That old boy says, just come on down here. You lay one hand on that kid, I'll throw your ass plumb back up on top of that stack of beans. He just turned around and went back up. He said, turn her on. I never did have any more trouble. But that old boy, he was the stoutest man I ever seen. He could take a sack of beans, lay them flat on the floor at the warehouse, one-handed. I'm talking about wet beans. They hadn't been washed and dried. It weighed about 115 pounds. He'd just pick up a ear that side, throw it over his truck on the other side with one hand. You know. And if he's there about noon, there's a little cafe up there. And if he didn't take over 15 to 20 minutes for lunch, you didn't get docked. That was a straight hour, you know, you just worked 12 hours. You didn't have to work the extra, make up that. And I'd go to lunch with him, and he'd tell the chef, he says, give me a steak that's warm, and he said, if it's still bleeding a little bit, that's okay, and give me a big old glass of water. That's all he'd eat. He'd eat that piece of raw meat, and then, I mean, he'd bring him a chunk that big. He must have had a pound and a half of beef, and he'd eat that, just dripping with blood, and go back on his truck, boy, and that's when he'd drink that water and eat that raw meat.
What was his name?
I have no, I can't remember to save my life, but he was probably 6 foot tall, maybe, and was just all, I mean, just man. I mean, his arms and his shoulders and his chest, and he had a big GMC truck with an extra long bed, and that sucker, I don't know how many tons of beans in the haul, but I was glad to see that guy because I knew I was in safe territory when he was around. But I can't remember his name.
Now, tell me about getting your draft notice. Getting your draft notice.
Jack.
Getting your draft notice.
Oh, my draft notice? Well, let's see, that was in 1943. After I got to be 43 years old, and
No, you were 18.
yeah, I was 18.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I turned 18 in 1943, and that's when you had to register.
Yes.
You know, and of course I knew I had to be. I was in Oklahoma when I registered, because I delayed my trip to California and talked to the draft board, and they said, "Don't worry about it. Said your family will send your card on it if you get it." And I spent a whole season out there, didn't even get called. Then I come home and I went and talked to the draft board. I said, well, we knew you were and stuff, but we didn't draft you. They didn't call you. So that's when I went down and enlisted, trying to get in. And because one of my cousins I was real close to, Jim Taylor, his name, he lived in Warner, Oklahoma. He had already been drafted and went to the Philippines, and the Japanese had killed him. He had died, and I had several of my buddies that I hunted with that had gone in and got killed, and I had some cousins that went in. Thank goodness didn't get killed, and my first cousins, my mother's brother's boys. But then, well, after I got drafted and I didn't get called, I just started going back to California and kind of ignoring my draft board. But every time I'd come home, and I'd come home usually once every year. Sometime it was in the fall, after the season that was over out there. And like the guy out there said, come on, spend my money and then go back. Give it away, give it to the family, you know. But I just felt that's what I ought to do. But anyway, when I was drafted, I was, let's see, when was I? That was
You said
1948. That's 1948.
Now, you said you enlisted in World War II?
I had enlisted 2 or 3 times after I had been registered for the draft, because they wasn't calling me. You know, the draft wasn't calling me, and I talked to the draft board, and they said, "Don't worry about it. They'll call you when they're ready." Well, I'd get impatient, and my friends were getting killed, and I thought I ought to be a part of that, you know. And so I went to where you volunteer, and I signed up and told them, well, what I wanted to go to the Army or whoever would take me. And I'd go to Oklahoma City and take a physical, and they'd just turn me down. I'd go through there naked like everybody else. There's a building in Oklahoma City that should be 300 or 400 guys there, all naked as a pick bird. You just go through a line of doctors, you know, and they'd look you over and listen to your parts and all that sort of stuff. Stick their finger up your butt and in your nuts to see if you had a hernia, that sort of stuff. Then the last guy over there, he'd look at the reports, say, "No, you didn't make it." I said, what's wrong with me? He said, well, you got a nervous stomach. I said, what's that mean exactly? Well, he said, you got some kind of internal problem that the doctors think that you won't be able to handle the military food that they'll supply you when you go in there, that you won't be able to live on it, see? So they're not going to take you. Well, you know, I kept trying. The draft board told me one time, says, can you weld? I said, no, I can't weld, but I can learn how to weld. So me and a friend of mine from Warner, named Doug Walston, we started, back in those days they had schools in these towns called NYA, National Youth Administration, and there's one in Muskogee. So we joined that school and went to welding school. Me and Dub did, and I learned how to weld, passed all the tests. You had to pass a test that would allow you to weld on the shipbuilding places in California. So I passed overhead welding and all, flat welding and cutting iron and all of this other stuff. I learned how to do all that stuff. But then when I passed the test, I decided, I don't think I want to work in a damn shipyard. So they offered me to go to California, and they're trying to forget this, paying a good hourly wage. But I'd had to find a place to live and around Los Angeles or somewhere out there, and I didn't want to mess with that. So that's when I went to work for whoever I could work for, you know, and still help out on the farm. But then, can't remember, 1949, I guess, is after.
Where were you on VJ Day when the war ended? VJ Day when the war ended.
Where was I when the war ended? I was working for Dunlop Tire and Rubber Corporation in Muskogee.
Was there a big celebration?
Yeah, I remember on Broadway, in front of the Broadway Theater, and the street was full of people, just everybody singing and dancing and having fun, and the bands were there playing the music and all that sort of stuff. There was a big celebration. There sure was. And,
now, when were you drafted?
I was drafted in 1948. I worked for Ernie Young in the Phillips Station here in Tulsa. He was my uncle. And I figured, you know, they've turned me down all of this sort of stuff, so the war's over. They don't need people now. So I went to Oklahoma City for my physical. I got to the end of the line, the guy said, you're in tip-top shape, you know. Of course, I've been working on a service station driveway, running and washing cars, and, you know, I was really in good shape and stuff, so I got drafted, and I had, after I passed a physical, I had 10 days, and then I had to report to the bus station at Tulsa, and there was a bus waiting there to take they must have had 40 or 50 guys that had been drafted. We went to Fort Chaffee, Arkansas. It was called Camp Chaffee then, and that was, what time of year was that? I know it was the fall of the year. I don't know, maybe September, October. I can't remember.
You take basic at Camp Chaffee?
Camp Chaffee.
Did you take your basic there?
I took my basic training.
Tell me about basic.
Basic training. Well, you get off the bus, and this little sergeant, his name was Kelly. I never will forget this little devil. His name was Kelly. He was 5'5" or something. I don't know, a tall man, little man. He had a waist about this big around, ties bit, but the rest of him was just muscle. And he had a voice that he could shake this house. He had the strongest voice of anybody I've seen. Okay, you meatheads, get off that bus, get over on this road and line up. Well, I'd seen my brothers and other guys standing halfway attention, you know, and I knew that my objective was to please him. Because I said, don't mess with those platoon sergeants. They get on your case and you won't get off. But anyway, I got over on the road and I stood there about halfway at attention, and these guys finally got lined up, halfway lined up, and this little guy, this Sergeant Kelly, he come right over to me, bellied right up against me, and looked right up my nose. You know, I was just standing there and I'm looking at him, and he said, "Who in the hell do you think you are? You been in the military before?" No, Sergeant. He said, "Don't talk back to him." And I said, "No, Sergeant." Yeah, no, I said, "No, sir." And he says, "Where'd you learn to stand attention?" I said, "I was watching my brothers and stuff." Well, he says, "I got plans for you." And I thought, what do I do now? So he got everybody lined up, and he walked back over to me, and he says, "Okay, wise guy," he said, "you are the new recruit platoon guide." I said, "What does that mean, Sarge?" He said, "You will take when we form into a platoon, you'll be in the first squad, the first man, and you will carry the guide-on flag. And everybody will follow you. So you'll be the guide man in the platoon, all the way through basic training." And he says, "It's got its advantages." He says, "You will not have to do KP. You will not have to do guard duty. Won't have to do guard duty. See, on those posts you do, it's really just a fire duty. You got to walk a post and be sure there's not a fire or something anyway." He said, "You won't have to do any of that stuff like the rest of them, but you will be a corporal of the guard. There'll be squad from your platoon go out on guard duty. You'll be their corporal. You'll have to watch after them, stuff like that. You'll have to be sure every morning that everybody gets out of bed on time. The butt cans are all emptied and washed and cleaned. Put water in them again, put them on the post so guys can smoke and put the pots out. You make sure when you ever fall out to go to work that the restrooms are all clean, the showers are all clean, that sort of stuff, you know." Well, you don't do that. So, and he says, "Any other thing that I think of you do." So I like that part. I like that. I done that. Didn't have any trouble doing that. And I took basic training, and while that guy was chewing on my bones, I stood there, and I didn't ever sass him or nothing, but I was thinking, "You little devil, that you can't think of anything in your entire life that I can't do, and I'll do it better than anybody that you've ever asked to do it. I'm going to show you that I can do anything that you think of, you know." And I lived that. I don't care what he thought of. I've done it better than anybody else could ever do it. And because he kept a real close eye on me. And one time, we'd been on a night problem out in those Arkansas hills, and I turned my ankle. Man, was on patrol and stepped on something to turn my ankle, and it turned as black as that post, swelled up, and I couldn't tie my combat boot all the way to the top. The strings wasn't long enough. It swelled up so bad, but I wouldn't turn in. I wouldn't, because if you turned in for sick call, he called it sick, lame, and lazy. See, and because he'd fall out every morning. "Anybody for sick call?" Well, I said, "No, sir, Sergeant, not me." Well, anyway, that night, come back in, and we went right straight to a PT course, physical training, and we opened ranks, took off our stuff, stacked our rifles, take off your shoes, put on your tennis shoes, all that stuff, and then you went through this calisthenics and all of this crap. And when you've done, okay, fall back in. He said, "Okay, guys," he says, "the last guy that gets his combat boots laced up will do 50 push-ups right out in front of the platoon." Well, it just so happened that of course we were in open ranks, so he'd go up that way. And he come to me, and that right foot, and I couldn't, my boot wasn't laced up, because the string wasn't long enough, see? I finally caught you dumb dude. He called you everything but a good milk cow, you know. "What's wrong with that foot?" I said, "Nothing, Sarge." The sergeant, okay, give me 50. So I got out and I could give him 100 if he wanted them. I gave him 50 push-ups. It fell back in. He said, you going to tell me what happened to that foot? I said, nothing, Sarge. He said, give me 50 more. So I got out and gave him another 50. And got back to the barracks. And before he dismissed us, he says, platoon, ready for dismissal, Nordin, stand pat. I thought, I'm in trouble. So he dismissed the platoon. I was down there. He come over again, right belly right up against you, looking right up your nose. What the hell's the matter? It's just not like you to do this, pull this kind of crap. I'm okay, Sarge. I'm okay. Okay, we'll talk to you later. So fall out. So I fell out. Went in, and I got on my bunk, laid in, and I took that combat boot off and threw that foot over the end of my cot, and here comes Sergeant Kelly. I knew damn well there's something wrong with you. What's wrong with that ankle? I said, well, if you got to know, I turned it last night on that night problem, and it's swollen. Take a sock off, and he said, my ankle was just black. He said, it's broken? I said, I don't know, Sarge. Nobody looked at it yet. He said, I'll get a Jeep. We'll take you to sick call. I don't want to go to sick call. I'm not a sick, lame, and lazy, Sarge. So he took me to sick call anyway. And they put a bandage on it and all this damn crap. From then on, every morning we'd fall out after roll call. And he'd tell me to stand fast. And okay, he'd say, second man, lead the platoon, we're going to building so-and-so down there, you know where it is, go down there. And he'd take me to sick call in a Jeep. And then he'd come back and he said, can you walk? Yeah, I can walk, Sarge. I said, well, he said, you know where we're going? So I started over there. And boy, by the time I got over there, I'd be hurting so bad, I'd just be in a sweat, you know. So he'd come behind the Jeep and pick me, and he wouldn't let me walk anymore. But then when I finished basic training, he come in and he says, I'll put you down for anyway, what a damn thing. Just look at that yesterday. Anyway, it's a prerequisite to officers candidate school. It was
the leadership school or
leadership school.
Yeah.
I was a leadership school, yeah. PLS they call it, potential leadership school. You know, and I said, Sarge, I don't think I want to go to that thing. He said, I didn't ask you if you want to go. You're going. He said, you're going. Or you and me not going to get along. And he says, there's a catch. He said, if you flunk, you won't be eligible for any other school the Army's got to offer. He said, that's what the cost is if you flunk out. But I said, I don't worry about that because, you know, anyway, I went to that thing. And there was 37 of us went, and we were a class. The group you go with was a class during the whole thing. And your foot locker had to be open for inspection 24 hours a day, every day. Each class had a bird dog, we call him. There's a sergeant with a paper clip, with a clipboard, everybody's name on it. If you said shit, he'd make a mark. If you said anything profane or vulgar, anything that you done, he never said a word to you. You know, he just write it down. After so many of those, they just send you to the school office, kick you out. So many demerits, and I didn't have any demerits. But anyway, they done their best to make you mad. We were in this barracks, and they tell you as soon as you get up, the uniform today is Class B fatigues, you know. So you get up and you get dressed and you get go. Then you line up. We had to march to chow. We had to march and be seated. We got up together. We marched back together and all that sort of stuff. And you get back into the barracks, and everything in that barracks had to be ready for inspection at all time. your clothes, your hangers had to be 3/4 of an inch apart. Every button on your shirt, every button on your shirt. Your shoes had to be, you had even number days, odd number days. The 2, 4, 6s, those shoes were flat lace. The odd numbers was cross lace. And those were under your bed, ready for inspection, shined. Even had nail holes in the heel of your shoes. They'd pick them up and look, try to see if there's any dirt down in them. You had to clean all that stuff out. Just, they try to make you mad. And if you made you mad, they didn't say anything. They just kicked you out of school. And if you said, what kind? Oh, and we had to give classes. You had to write a lesson plan. And they'd say the lesson plan for tomorrow is nap reading, use the compass. For instance. You had to make a lesson plan of what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. You had to have a purpose, scope, all that stuff. You had to write this out, and you had to have 3 copies, and you wrote it out. Well, lights went out in your barracks at 10 o'clock. The only lights you had left was in your bathroom. So we'd work sometime until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning getting our lesson plan ready for the next day, and we wouldn't go get back on our bunk because we had to make it. That's a white collar bunk with no wrinkles, no wrinkles in it. So we'd just lay down on the floor and sleep a little bit, and they'd come and ask you, and then they'd give you your orders, maybe fatigues for the next day. Well, just 15, 20 minutes before they called you to go to chow, they said, change uniform. You got to have got a Class A uniform, and all that stuff. So you had to get these other clothes off, hang them up, button the buttons, put this other stuff on, and you had about 10 minutes to get all this stuff done, And I dare you to say anything. You done it like you would like to do it. And I never made a demerit on that stuff. I just done it, done it. But one old boy he's from Houston, Texas. I'll never forget him. He was giving a class on something, and this building was full of officers, company commanders from the training companies all over Camp Chaffee, Arkansas. And they'd start asking you questions about, did I see you down to Brass Rail in Fort Smith the other day? And if you say, yeah, I was probably there or something, talk to you, they start talking. Anything to get you off your subject. Well, this old boy from Houston, he got tired of that. And he said, if you son of a bitches will shut up asking questions, I'll get on with this. As the end of him, they kicked him out that night. But that's the spirit of the whole thing, and you get so aggravated at them, But you're supposed to say, no, sir. After class, if you want me to tell you about that, meet me around the back or something, and we'll talk about it, and just go on like it didn't happen. But some of them just didn't have it different. But anyway, I graduated that thing, and I graduated 8th out of the class of 37. And then this bird dog has been with you all this time. All in this big room is full of these officers again. You go through, and this bulldog gets up, and he did this, he graduated this, he done all this stuff. And the commanding officer of the company that he took basic training has priority. If that commander wants you back in his company, then he has priority to take him. Otherwise, any of you company commanders out there want him, just say, I'll take him. It's kind of like auctioning off a bull or something, But anyway, my company commander that took basic training with when I first come in, as B Company, 47th Armored Infantry in Camp Chaffee. And he said, I'll take him. So I went back to that company as a buck private, as an acting platoon sergeant. That was the deal. No promotions. You couldn't get a promotion anyway, And
why?
Yeah.
Why couldn't you get a promotion?
I'm sorry.
Why couldn't you get a promotion?
promotions after World War II were frozen. Uh, Everybody that had been in combat was either a sergeant first class, a staff sergeant, or above. You know, you get shot at 4 or 5 times in Germany, they give you a 1 or 2 grade promotion. And the ranks were so full of non-commissioned officers, they just didn't have any more room on the payroll for them, you know. And a lot of those guys stayed in just because they had a good rating, because they got pretty good pay, you know. And they went back into a training company, it wasn't hard work, stuff like that. And it was a pretty good deal. But they put me back into a platoon, and they sent the sergeant that had that platoon. They put him in the pipeline, they said, which meant they shipped him out somewhere. So it was just me and that platoon. There was 60s. Let's see, I had I had 8 squads, and 4 squads upstairs and 4 squads downstairs. I had 8 squads, and a normal squad was 12. So I had a lot of guys to contend with, and I told them when I took them over, I said, if I do this right, before the first week's over, you guys are going to hate my guts, because I'm all discipline. Without a discipline, a soldier's not worth his salt. And you guys, if I say, shit, I want you to squat. I don't want you to say how much or whatever, just squat. I'll tell you, you know. And that's where it was. I took no bull crap, but that's it. I got one requirement. On the side of the barracks, you could get the first drilled platoon plaque, the cleanest platoon plaque, about 5 or 6 plaques you could get on your platoon. I said, we're going to put every one of them on our platoon, we're going to keep them. I tell you about one though, that I really, company commander called me over one day and he said, I was about my 3rd or 4th cycle of training. When the commander called me, he said, battalion commander wants to see you. Colonel Swabel, he's a German guy. And mean. He had a German shepherd that didn't understand English. But the colonel wanted to see me now. Because I'd been sent to this chaplain a time or two because I had a tendency to curse the troops, you know, and they turned you in. But anyway, I said, what about, sir? He said, don't know, he just wants to talk to you. So I'll go down there, and the colonel says, I understand you're pretty strict on discipline. I said, all the way, sir. That's the only way the Army will work. He said, okay, I'll tell you what I got. He said, I got another company up here, told me what company it was. He said, I got a 4th platoon up there that were given the opportunity of going to jail or going to the Army. And these guys took the Army. And the sergeant that had that platoon, he was there 3 weeks, and now he's in the Section 8, the loony bin of a hospital. They drove him crazy in 3 weeks. And I want you to go up there and see if you can straighten them out. He said, you think you can do it? So I said, I don't know, sir, but I'll give it a try if you say so. I said, what can I do? He said, you think you're big enough to do? I said, you keep the chaplains off of me? I said, I have a tendency to swear. He said, don't worry about the chaplain, I'll take care of the chaplain. And he says, check in up there with the company commander. So I went up and talked to him, and I asked him, I said, what can I do with these guys? He said, anything you want to do. He said, they're yours. They are yours. So, okay. And it's about 11 o'clock in the morning. So I go over and this big old 2-story barracks, you always fall out the back door, the big double door down the steps. So I get out there and blow the whistle to get them to fall out. 15 minutes later, they're still stumbling out there. Seeing, I had them fall in, and they did know how to get in line and stand at attention. And I said, hey guys, we found something else to do. I said, I said, and their recruit platoon leader, he said, hey, you. He told me, hey, you. Hey, you. He said, you know, we rotate going to chow here. And he said, this week we are first. I said, I got some bad news for you, buddy. This week we're last. And we don't go to chow. I'll take you to chow. You fall out, get in proper order, I'll march you to chow. When we leave, I'll march you back to the barracks. I'll be on you like stink on shit. I'm gonna live with you, see? Oh, and then you could hear that little mumbling and stuff, you know. So I held them up last. Fourth platoon, we went to the mess hall last. And when they got ready to go, I had them fall out, line up, take them back down there. And before I fell back in the barracks, I said, we're supposed to have a class this afternoon, but the class this afternoon is right here. We're going to have a class on falling in and out of the barracks. And I said, I only got one rule. I said, when those double doors on the back of that thing open, I want the first man to come out. When it closed, I want the last man to come out. That's how fast I want you out here. You're double up. I mean, I want those doors open. And that includes the guys upstairs. They got to come downstairs, but that's no excuse. Mm-hmm. They're out here, you know, all that sort of stuff. And you should have heard the mumbling and about jab. So we got back and I told that recruit platoon guide, I said, now, you're responsible. I want you to be sure that last man upstairs is out there. Because you got little exemptions. You'll be the last man out, see? Okay. Well, shit. Boy, we stood out there all afternoon. Fell in and out of the brakes. Mumbling. They did a little better, but then they'd goof off. And I'd give them a chewing out. And I call them everything but a good milk cow. And chow time come. I said, same rules apply, guys. We're last. So when I fall you out, we'll go to chow. So take a little extra effort and get out of here pretty quick, and we'll get to chow hall a little quicker, you know. And at 11 o'clock that night, they finally fell out to meet my specifications. The big door opened once, and the last guy come out, and they were all out in line, you know. And I said, okay, guys, now it's about 11 o'clock at night. I said, hey, boy, okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now we're going to have a party. So you guys ever hear of a GI party? No. I said, there's a lot of you going to like it. You're going to like it. I said, okay, here's the way it works. I said, when we fall back in, I want everything in that barracks, foot lockers, beds, clothing, everything in that barracks out here on the parade field. Empty the barracks, empty the barracks. We're going to have a GI party up there. That means we're going to scrub the floors, we're going to clean the windows, we're going to clean the bathroom, that sucker's going to look like a brand new, we're going to wash the walls, we're going to do it all. It'll take all night. Well, we got all night. We don't have, you guys got anything else to do? We got all night. Well, it's about 4 o'clock the next morning, about time to fall out, that they got done, you know, get all the stuff back in, and I went to see if the clothes was hanging up and the buttons was buttoned and all that sort of stuff. And I walked, my room was upstairs too. I walked downstairs and walked up to the guys. The guys sitting on their foot lockers, they turned their back on me. Oh, she's talking about sour grapes. They didn't like me at all. And that's just the way I wanted it. But that's the way I treat them the whole time. And I told the company commander when I went up there, I said, your company don't have any more dirty details. My platoon's got them all. You got a dirty detail, I want to know about it. He said, well, some of them are pretty long. I said, they got all night, you know, takes all night. But I volunteered them. Well, I mean, I worked their asses off. But you know, when they graduated, they took up a collection. Went and bought me a present. And they sent a guy to my room and said, the platoon got together and want to thank you for changing our life and making better people out of us. And, you know, a lot of those guys decided to stay in the Army, make a career out of it. But I didn't give a damn. One or two of them wanted to fight. I said, okay, guys, we'll fight. I said, I'm not a big fighter. I'm not mean or anything. But any one of you guys wants to fight, just come to my room, knock on the door, or put your name on the list, and me and I'll go out between the barracks and we'll fight. And I said, there's probably some of you guys can whip my ass. But just remember, you're going to have to live with me about 15, 16 weeks. I'll make you wish you'd never been born, you know. So if that's the way you want to play the game, we'll play the game. Well, I had to fight a couple of guys, but it didn't bother me, you know. One guy whipped my ass pretty good, but I told him, I said, this is not the end of it. I'll whip you before you leave this basic training. I'll figure out how to do it. Then I'll do it every time I meet you on the road. But anyway, I went back to the battalion commander. He was at the graduation, and he congratulated me. But in this day and age, you'd get a letter of commendation and all that stuff. They didn't do none of the crap. But anyway.
Where were you when the North Koreans invaded the South?
I'm sorry?
Where were you when North Korea invaded the South, 1950?
Well, I went over as reserved, so the North Koreans had already pushed down and captured Seoul when I got there.
Tell me about going to Korea.
Yeah.
How'd you go to Korea?
Okay, see, I was recalled in September of '50.
What unit were you with, reserves? What reserve unit were you in?
I was inactive.
Okay.
I was in inactive reserve.
Okay.
Yeah, because when I got out, see, when I left Chaffee, the law had changed, and the company commander called me over, and he says, I might tell you this, but he says, you can get out of the Army now if you want to. The law changed, and draftees like you, I was drafted into that deal, draftees like you, if you've served 12 months, a minimum of 12 months, and you want to get out of the Army right now, you can get out. No penalties, no nothing, you can just get out, see? And but you have to transfer into the reserve. It won't be an honorable discharge, it'll be an honorable transfer in inactive reserve. So I said, I'll take that.
Now, when did you transfer to the reserves? When did you get out of the Army?
I got out of the Army then. That was, let's see, 48, 49, that's late 49.
49.
Late 49, yeah. Late 1949. I can't remember the exact date. But then I was called back in April. Let's see, when was I called back? April? No. September 50. It's called back for September 50.
Tell me about going to Korea.
When did I go?
Tell me about the trip to Korea.
Oh boy, okay. That's okay. That's a good one. Yeah, you know, when you're in the reserve that way, you don't get a call. They deliver you a set of orders. So I was working at the Skelly Station at 10th and Elgin, and here come the postman one day with on his little cart, special delivery. Got something for you? I said, I opened it up. It said orders, go to Oklahoma City for a physical. And I said, what's this about? He's down Devano. So I went to Oklahoma City the next day and checked in, and the guy says, you're in the reserve, and they've decided in Korea they may need some of the reserve, so they're going to find out who all's ready to go physically. So okay, it's all right. So they give me examination, all this stuff, and the lieutenant says, I said, well, I'd only been married 5 months, and not this one. But he, let's see what happened. Forgot where I was going with that, but anyway.
You were called to active duty.
I was called active duty, yeah. And I asked the lieutenant, I said, how much time do I have, you know, if I get my orders to go? He said 3 weeks minimum, but at least, no, 3 weeks is probably longer, you know. And he said, you may not even get called. Well, 2 days later, I get my second set of orders. I had to be on the train that night for Fort Hood, Texas. And they read the articles of war to us at Fort Hood, Texas. If we're going to send you to Capstone, California for ship out to Korea, if you jump ship, so to speak, and go home to see the family, and will be desertion in the face of combat, the penalty is firing squad. So you take a chance on facing the firing squad if you leave before you get to Korea. So you're on your way to Korea combat. So I went to Camp Stoneman, and I was there about a day and a half, and they sent us to San Francisco. They had us on a flight. We was all out and lined up to take a flight to South Korea, and officer in the Jeep come in, and it was dark. It was about 10, 11 o'clock at night, and had his lights on and stuff, and he said, okay, infantry, he said, you guys can stand down. He said, this plane has been confiscated. He said, they need a load of officers, and we're taking it. We're going to send a load of lieutenants to South Korea on your plane. So you just fall back in. There's a ship waiting in the next port down there, and you guys will be on that ship. You be at those ship. So here we go. And I happened to be in a platoon that for some reason or other, they said that you and your group are going to be guards on the ship, on ships, until you get to Korea, until you get to Japan, rather. Japan. So it's okay. Well, and then to get on the ship.
What was the name of the ship?
On the General. Shit, I can't remember. Got a picture of it somewhere. I can't remember.
Okay.
Can't remember. The General. Is it something? But we go on board. I was the advance party, what they call the advance party, which is the guards and stuff. And this guy's, and there was a squad of Marines that was in charge of me, the guards. So I get on and report to the lieutenant, and he says, I said, what do you want me to do, sir? He said, stand along that rail over there, it's next to the port, or the dock, or whatever it is. Keep the troops back away from that rail. We don't want no bunch of gawkers falling overboard and stuff. You got to keep them off of that, see? All that stuff, see? It's okay. And so here I am. I got an area about 30 feet long, and there's about 500 GIs pushing their way up to the rail. You know how close they got? As close as they wanted to get. I just went back over to the bulkhead on the ship, leaned back against that, and the Marine sergeant come by, and he says, what's your post? I told him, the rail. Why it's up there? I said, I can't throw all those guys up there. I can't throw them way overboard, and I can't get them to come back. So what do you want me to do? Shoot them? I said, my rifle's empty, buddy. He said, forget it. Sorry I asked. But anyway, by 10 o'clock that night, the Marine lieutenant called us all together, and he said, you guys are free of duty. The Air Force just put on 500 military police. They're taking over security on the entire ship. So you guys are free to do as you please. So we had to run to the ship, boy. We'd go down to mess hall, all that sort of stuff. But we took off sometime that night, and we hit a storm about daylight the next morning. And I tell you, you talk about a rough ride. And the ship captain, he come on the public address system, and we were barred from being up on the top deck. Couldn't be on there. Everybody had to be below deck. And I tell you, that ship, up and down, up and down. Just went back and forth. Even the crew was sick. I mean, them suckers were sick. And my bunk was like 3 decks below the water line. That's how close to the bottom of the ship I was. So to get out of there, you walk across your floor, steel floor, and you go up a ladder. It's usually hanging, and instead of being this way, it's usually hanging back this way. And 4 guys in front of you, on top of you, is in the process of puking. Just everybody above you puking on top of you and all that stuff. You're soaked by the time you get up there. And you get up on deck, and you smell like a gut wagon. And then the company, the ship commander, everybody below deck. So you go down and you got the same thing going down. And your cot is a steel pole like that, and it's got a bunk hanging on it, chained, made out of chains, and you just jump up there and fall in. There's a blanket in there and a pillow, and that thing is just, you got to hang on for dear life, keep getting tossed out of there.
You were stacked how high?
Yeah. Well, there's about 8 or 9 high, plumb to the deck, from the deck above you, because they started about this high, and then took about every 3 feet. There's another guy, they climb up the side on there to dunk and step on you or whatever it took. And the guys on top of you was puking all night. But anyway, that was the life. So I got where I would just stay out of reach of all of that stuff. And I got so sick, I was vomiting blood. I mean, I thought I was going to die. Seasick, and the ship captain asked for permission 2 or 3 different times to return. No, he wouldn't do it. Wouldn't break the orders. Well, it was that way 3 days and nights. The ship commander, we just up and down, and they sideways. We didn't mind. He had his ship set at 18 knots. We didn't gain 1 mile for 3 days and nights. That sucker. Talking about sick. Well, I met an old master sergeant, and he said, "Man, you look bad." I said, "Oh, I am bad. I'm terrible." He said, "Let me tell you what." He said, "Do you mind working?" I said, "Not at all." He said, "Go down to the mess deck, see Chief something or other." He told me the guy's name. "Tell him I sent you, and he'll take care of this seasickness." So I said, "I'll do anything." So I went down there, and he said, "Do you mind working?" I said, "I'll do anything. I'll shovel, whatever you got, I'll do it." And he said, "Okay." But he says, "You peel potatoes?" I can do anything. Well, it's a little bit different than peeling potatoes in the Navy than it is in the Army. You know, the knife. They got a little, it looks like a little cement mixer. They're about that big around, about this tall, and they're set in concrete at an angle. You open the lid up here, and it's open in there, and you put a whole sack of potatoes in there, and inside it's got those things like cement mixer that turns, and it grinds all the peelings off of those things, and with water, it's rolling with water, and it takes about 5 minutes to do 100 pounds of potatoes. And that mess sergeant said, "You like raw potatoes?" "Oh yeah." "Well, eat one every chance you get." Whatever chance you get. See, when you get up, peel up potatoes, go over there in that bunker, and it's full of lettuce, heads of lettuce. Get in there, he said, "I want you to cut up some for salad anyway," and he said, "Eat all that raw lettuce you can." Boy, before the day was over, I didn't care if I whistled away. I didn't have any seasickness at all. In that mess hall, he said, "Come on down in the morning. I'll show you what a breakfast is." Went down there, he says, "Hey, you want a piece of ham for breakfast?" He threw a big old slab of ham on that grill about that big. "How do you like your eggs scrambled?" "Yeah." He gets you 3 or 4 eggs, you know. And always had dessert down there and all that stuff. I worked in that mess hall, on that mess deck, the rest of the way till we got to Japan. Didn't have another sick man alive. I loved that. But anyway, you get to Japan. Oh, in the meantime, leaving Fort Hood, they give you a brand new rifle. And I already had one, and I cleaned it, and we had 10 days there, and cleaned it. went to California, and we had to turn those rifles in, and they gave us a new one with cosmoline. It had to be cleaned before we got to Camp Stoneman. And we got to Camp Stoneman, we turned that one in and got another one that was cosmoline, and it had to be cleaned before we got to Japan. Then we went up to the Fort, whatever the hell it is, north of Tokyo, and they took that clean one and gave you another one to clean. So then you go on a rifle range and you zero in, get your rifle ready to go to combat. And then they give you some PT and all that sort of stuff. But we were up there, we was at that camp 2 or 3 days. Then they put us on trucks and took us back to, what's the name of that town? I can't think of that town south of Tokyo. Anyway, at the port.
Yokohama?
Sasebo.
Sasebo?
Yeah.
What unit were you assigned to?
Huh?
What unit were you assigned to?
I was assigned to the Company K, 19th Infantry Regiment, 24th Infantry Division. And I was assigned to a recoilless rifle squad. Recoilless rifle because I'd had training when I was in basic training on recoilless rifle. And I didn't really look forward to serving on a recoilless rifle because if you're firing it at night, you're not supposed to fire but 3 rounds in any one position at night because they light up the whole country. And you're always on the high point of the position because you're knocking out automatic weapon fire for a 3 or 4 mile radius. And everybody's trying to get you. So when the company commander, when I was assigned to the K Company, anybody know anything about a recoilless rifle? I didn't say nothing. So he looked at my record. Hey, Nordin, come back here. Yes, sir. You're on a recoil rifle squad. Okay. Well, the guy had been killed the day before, so I took his place.
Now, were you in Korea at this time? Were you in Korea at this time?
Yes, in Korea.
Now, where did you land in Korea?
Incheon.
Incheon.
Incheon. Come off the ship. Got unloaded the ship to Incheon, South Korea. Yeah.
Now, were you there after the invasion?
Yes. That was, well, the North Koreans had already been in Seoul, the city, the capital of South Korea, Seoul, was just, 3 or 4 miles north of Incheon, and inland a little bit, 20 miles or so. And it had been captured by the North Koreans. Then the North Koreans had already pushed south all the way to Pusan. The Pusan perimeter is all we had left. Mm-hmm. And it was either die or, and they said they was going to push you in the ocean, you know. But we got in there, and after we got...
did you land at Pusan?
Pusan. No, we got off the ship at Incheon,
okay. And
they put us on a truck and took us to a place called Yongdong-po. That was a replacement depot. Yongdong-po, that's 3 letters, 3 words, Yongdong-po. And that's where we were assigned to our companies.
Okay.
You know, there's a lieutenant there with a clipboard. Call his name, this name, this name. Get on that truck, you're going to the 2nd Division. Or you're going to the 24th or whatever. Except me. I'm looking around there, and I'm the only trucker still sitting in the crowd. I mean, there'd been 2,000 or 3,000 guys there an hour before. Now I'm the only guy there with the lieutenant. I said, sir, where the hell am I supposed to go? He said, what's your name? I told him. He said, well, I got you down for the 24th Infantry. I said, you didn't call the 24th Infantry. Well, I know it. That was the last bunch. You're supposed to have been with the last bunch. I said, I wasn't here with the last bunch. I just got here. See? Okay, get on that truck. He said, that's going that direction. So I got on that truck, and I got close enough that I could walk over to the 24th, and that's when I was assigned to the 24th Infantry. And but anyway, that's how I got to the 24th Infantry. And then the captain says, see that bearded guy right over there? And I said, yeah. He said, that's your squad leader. His name Pate, P-A-T-E, Pate. That's okay. Lloyd Pate. And so I went over and introduced myself, and I told him I'm your replacement. for your squad. He said, well, you're my assistant gunner. He said, you ever been assistant gunner on a recoilless rifle? I said, well, in basic training, yeah, I know how to do it, stuff. He said, okay, I'll tell you when and how and all that sort of stuff. But he said, first, I've been online for 5 weeks. I got to get a bath and shave. So away he went. Well, about an hour and a half later, I see this guy sitting over there. And that guy looks fairly familiar, so I talked to him. I said, your voice sounds familiar. Have we met? He said, I'm your squad leader, you dumbass. He said, I said, you're a damn kid. He's 17 years old. He looked like he was 40. He'd been in combat the whole time, Korea, And he said, my name's Pate. He said, Lloyd Pate, but just call me Pate. And so we exchanged pleasantries and stuff on where you're from and all that sort of stuff. And he said, are you a fighter or runner? I said, I only run when I get the order, buddy. That's what I've been taught. That's discipline. And I said, I'll be there as long as you are, unless you're dead. Then I'll leave you. But he said, we're on the right page. And from that time on, Ben, guys, he was a hell of a soldier, but he had a big flaw. It was the first night we was together, and we were on a forward slope of this hill that we'd taken, and had to dig a hole. And our hole from 57, it had to be big enough for 2 men. Plus, you had to have another foxhole for your ammunition, for your recoilless rifle, and I needed a little hole for hand grenades. So I started, man, I'm digging this daggum hole. And old Pacey sat down on the side of the hill. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm resting. He said, I haven't had anything to eat since 4 o'clock yesterday morning. I said, you're not the only one that's hungry, but we got to get in this hole before they counterattack. He said, don't worry about that. We'll handle that. So anyway, we made it through that and got the hole done and all that stuff. And that night, dark coming, because, first time in combat, I didn't feel like you could drive a spike in my butt with a sledgehammer. You're just on nerves. And it got dark at about 10 or 11 o'clock, and Pate says, are you sleepy? I said, no, I'm not sleepy. He said, I'm getting a little sleepy. He says, you want to take a first watch? I said, yeah, I'll take a first watch. I said, don't worry about it. You take a sleep, have a good sleep. I'll be on board here. So they took my M1 when they assigned me to that squad. Took me M1, gave me a carbine, and gave me a 45. That was the SOP for a recoilless rifle guy. And so I took my 45 out of the holster and laid it in my lap, because I'd already heard that those Chinese and North Koreans were really good at slipping up on you. They slip up on your hole, drop a grenade over in the hole with you. And I told Pate, I said, he'll just drop one, because I'll blow his head off before he gets tasted. You're that kind of guy. So he went to sleep, and all of a sudden, it was about 3 o'clock the next morning, and I'm still wide awake. And Pate woke up, and to smoke, he had to smoke. I said, you gonna light a cigarette just for foxhole? He said, yeah. He said, I just put my sleeping bag up over my head, and I smoke inside the sleeping bag. So I said, Jesus, I can smell the smoke, That's a no-no for me. I don't think you ought to be smoking in here. I got nobody telling me I can smoke, so I smoked. He smoked. And I sat there with him until like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And he says, I think I'll take a little nap. So he went to sleep. So I'm sitting there, and he said, wake me up in about an hour. So about an hour later, I woke him up, and I said, you want to be awake? No, he said, not necessarily. So I sleep pretty good. I said, go back to sleep if you want to. No, he said, I'll take a couple hours. So I just hunkered down in my a sleeping bag, and oh, I never did get a winter sleeping bag. All we ever got was summer sleeping bags, like they're frozen to death. But anyway, I hunkered down in there. They said, I'll stay watch for a couple hours. Well, about 20 minutes later, I hear him. So I go, what the hell you mean you stay awake? He said, I'll stay awake. Well, about another 20 minutes, he's asleep again. I didn't bother to wake him up. I just stayed on duty. So the next morning, I told him, man, you might as well get something straight. Right now, buddy, one of us is going to be awake. One of us is going to be awake. It's going to be me. It's pretty obvious that you can't stay awake. And I said, I'm not going to sit asleep in a hole and have my squad leader sleep at the same time. It's too risky. It's risky. I said, if you'll promise me that during the daytime, if we get a chance, I can catch a couple of winks. I don't have to have a lot of sleep, but if I sleep a half hour, 45 minutes during the daytime, I'll be fine, see? I knew that. Well, that's the way we worked the rest of the time until we was captured. I didn't trust him, and he knew it, and he accepted it, you know? And he really didn't blame me for not trusting him, because he just flat couldn't stay awake.
Now, where were you in South Korea in the foxhole?
Well, at that time, we were south of the 38th parallel. I would say, well, we were south of the airport.
Were you near Seoul?
Kimpo. We were south of Kimpo. So we were probably 25, 30 miles south of Seoul, South Korea, the capital.
Okay.
Yeah. And really, we're just waiting for orders to come down and see where we would be ordered to go to the next morning. But,
now, where'd you go when you were captured?
from there,
Yes.
From there we went north. Believe it or not, we went back up. We went back up north. Chinese. This is before the Chinese come in. Chinese didn't come in in November '50. You know, we were still fighting North Koreans, and we had already taken
Panmunjom?
the North Korean capital.
Panmunjom.
Yeah. We'd already taken that, and of course, then the North Koreans was trying to take it back, so we fought them back up there, and we were on and of course MacArthur had just dropped. You know, MacArthur had made a parachute drop there near the 38th parallel, which nobody said it could be done. All the other officers, the Air Force guys in England and everything said General MacArthur Tracy, he cannot make an invasion from Incheon. You can't. The water is so shallow, you can't get the LSTs in close enough. But MacArthur had it down to a pinpoint to where you had a certain hour you could get in, but it had it not late or not early, and he had it timed. Then he made that parachute drop along that straight line all the way across it east and west there, near the 38th parallel. It caught him by surprise. And of course, then we all went north because the troops that were still in South Korea were slaughtered. You know, we just gun them, you just shoot them down like dogs, and that was the objective: just kill them. You didn't have time to capture them. One enemy soldier that's captured takes 5 Americans to take care of him. You know, and it's not worth it. But in the same way the enemy. So you got that, they got the same information. But anyway, we pushed all the way back. This is like in late November, and we went all the way to Yalu River. We pushed back through Pyongyang. Yeah, Pyongyang. Pyongyang's North Korean capital. Pyongyang. I just couldn't think of it. Pyongyang. Pyongyang, Norbury. And you know Pyongyang is not all that far from the South Korean capital. If you look at the map, I got one somewhere. But South Korea, Seoul, South Korea, is 20, 25 miles south of the 38th parallel, and that's the dividing line. And that's where the DMZ is now, the demilitarized zone, and that's where we come back to when the war was over, the DMZ, and Panmunjom. We come back to Panmunjom, but anyway, I don't know where I was. But,
You're talking about where you were when you were captured.
oh, well, we went to the Yellow River. Chinese come in, and they pushed us. You're not gonna believe this. The Chinese were so numerous that the first line to come at us was like a line of scrimmage. A single man coming at you with rifles. You kill them. The line behind them didn't have weapons. They picked up their weapons and they come at you and you kill them. And they keep doing that, they run you out of your position. We burned up our automatic weapons trying to kill them. There's so many of them you can't kill them all. That sounds hard to believe, but that's a fact. That is a fact. And they'll come right off and run you right out of your position. And you either got to surrender or get out. And our orders was to get out. And we fought what they call a delaying action. They'd pull us back, and we'd find up a line of scrimmage, and then the other troops would pull back through them. And by the time they got back, the Chinese was on us. So we'd fight Chinese again, you know. And then we'd withdraw in the same process until we get far enough ahead of them. We got all the way back to the North Korean capital, Pyongyang, and MacArthur was determined that the war would be over by Christmas. And at the schoolhouse at Pyongyang had been brought in. It was full of fruitcakes, liquor, booze, beer, every kind of Christmas candy and stuff that you could ever have in that schoolhouse. The schoolyard was full of new tanks, trucks, jeeps, staff cars, brand new stuff been flown in there, stacked up. And when 24th come through there, we knew we couldn't keep. They knew that we couldn't stay ahead of the Chinese. It's coming too fast. That I was on a detail to destroy that stuff. We had cases of incendiary grenade. You know what an incendiary grenade is? It's a canister deal, about that tall. You set it on the block of an engine, it just burn a hole right straight through it, that big around. If a drop of it gets on your hand, it'll just go right through it. But we had to raise the hoods on those new Jeeps, trucks, and tanks, raise hoods, put those incendiary grenades on them and destroy them to keep the enemy from getting them. They had a stack of sea rations out there that was probably, I would say, 80 feet wide, 30 feet high, and 100 feet long. Cases of sea rations, food for soldiers. We threw grenades on those and burned them. And after we got done with it, the jets come in and dropped napalm on them and strafed them to be sure that everything was burning in the schoolhouse when everything left. But then, my outfit was trying to withdraw south, and there was a tank, and the tanks were going back so quick that if a tank run out of fuel, there was no getting fuel. So the crew got off, got on the back of the tank that was in front of them, and the tank behind him pushed it over the edge of the cliff. Then it tumbled down the cliff because you didn't have time to save any of your equipment. But that's the way all that equipment was headed all the way back. So the 19th Infantry, they told us to get on the back of a Jeep, back of a tank. Do you know how hot it gets on the back of a tank? That's where the heat from the engine comes out. The muffler's about this big around on each side. They get white hot. They get white hot. I had my poncho hanging over my belt on the back, and just squatting down, got my poncho afire. But we rode that thing all night long, and we must have been about the 30th tank in line, because you can't imagine the dust. My ears was full, my rifle was so clogged up you couldn't even get stuff like that. Until we got to daylight the next morning, and we got off and told us to clean the weapons and get ready for combat. And then we got back with our unit and started our normal fighting procedures. And they'd set a line up and put us up trying to hold them, just trying to hold them back. And you'd fight them as long as you could and then withdraw. Like I told you, a recoilless rifle is in a high position on a ridge.
Now, what's a recoilless rifle?
A recoilless rifle, it's a 37 millimeter.
37
It
millimeter.
fires one shot, and it has a 4,000 yard range. Yeah. It'll blow a tank up. It'll blow the tracks off of a tank. It'll blow a truck all to pieces. But we had armor-piercing ammunition. We had phosphorus ammunition, and I forget what. We had four different bands. Mm-hmm. But our orders, Pete and I had orders. If the 57 recoilless don't make it back to the lines, I don't want to see either one of you guys. They were deathly afraid the Chinese would get some of our recoilless rifles because they were so deadly. But anyway, the night we'd been on line 3 weeks straight, and they pulled us back on 31st December. 31st December 50, put us back for a rest. And we'd been back, had a bath, and over there to get a bath, the villages have great big old crock pots about this big around, with a hole in it big enough that you can get your body down through. And they got women in the village that stand out there and they fill it full of warm water, because they got to heat everything. They don't have any hot water running or anything like that. But they fill it full of water, and then you get in there and you scrub off as best you can, and then those women, stripped to the waist, they get up in there and get in there and splash water on you, wash your hair and all that sort of stuff, and get you ready to get out and get some clean clothes on. But anyway, we got all that done and had a fresh meal, the mess hall, had a nice dinner in the evening and stuff. And Pete and I were assigned to watch the sea ration supply. Well, that gave us a chance to steal some sea rations and trade them for eggs. It was a court-martial offense to eat anything that was raised or a product of South Korea. Everything over there is fertilized with human shit, human feces. So we wasn't even allowed to eat an apple off an apple tree, but we did. And we got some good eggs and stuff. We paid trade for those. But anyway, about 10 o'clock or 10:30 that night, it came to settle. The one you don't like to hear, saddle up. That means get your gear, it's time to go. We had been put back in battalion reserve. Instead of being resting, we were in battalion reserve. And the Chinese had hit, it was New Year's Eve. Chinese had hit north of us, and they needed the 24th back up there to help stop them. So we got loaded up and went back up there. And we were assigned a position on this ridge to hold them north of that ridge. And we set up a position, and like I say, we were in the high part of the ridge. And I had used, God, I don't know how many rounds of ammunition I've used, but anyway, a lot more than I was supposed to. And I had bandoliers of 30 caliber, and I'd used all of that. I had 3 or 4 rounds left in my 45, and I had everything I owned hung with a grenade, and I threw all of those over the ridge because it had a mortar at the foot of the hill just right below us. And but anyway, somewhere along the way, the noise kind of died down. And I'm telling Pate, we're still there. And I see tracers coming up the ridge from our right flank, tracer bullets. And I tell Pate, I said, Pate, I think our outfit's pulled out. No, they wouldn't pull out. They'd tell us, they'd call us. I said, I wouldn't be damn sure, too sure of that. But I said, this is incoming from the right flank. And it's machine gun fire. And he said, well, we're stuck here, we're stuck. And about this time, we started getting artillery rounds coming in from our backside. And you could tell some of them was going over us, and some of them was going over. One of them, a piece of shrapnel about that big around, red hot from fire, landed about, I'm laying face down in this snow, and it landed about that far from me, melted in the snow.
How far from you back?
Huh?
How far from you?
Oh, maybe 33 feet, 3 feet. I told Pete, I said, Pete, this is incoming artillery, it's ours, coming from behind. He said, we can't go, we gotta stay. And about this time, I hear a guy coming up the hill, running. It was our section sergeant, another name. Anyway, he's hollered, running like a crazy man. Come on, 57 squad, we forgot you. Everybody else is gone, So we grab our stuff, and I got the 57, and because it's got a barrel about 30 inches out in front of you, and the breech is back here, and it's heavy. I grabbed that. Pete grabbed our bedrolls, and they had some chow rolled up in them and stuff. And we start down this hill, and to run with that 57, you got to hold it up like that to keep it from hitting the ground. So I'm running full tilt down this hill, and it's so black you can't see nothing. And I'm running full blaze, and I hollered, Pete, you coming? You coming? And it just leveled off into a rice paddy, just like that floor. It was froze solid with ice. Man, I tell you, I fell. You just throw your arms up like that to hold all your equipment that you can hold. And when I quit spinning around, I could hear my steel helmet still bouncing across that ice somewhere. I never did see that again. Then here come Pate, and he tumbled in, and he's got our bedrolls and stuff. And Sergeant Coxfield was our section sergeant. That's C-O-X, I can't remember how you spell that. Cockfield, C-O, anyway, more about him later. But we get up and we start. Coxfield says we went this way. Well, all we got that way is tracer bullets. Well, no damn direction. There's Chinese, North Koreans. Well, this is in November, see. The Chinese had come in, and we were trying to get away from them, and we went for 4 or 5 hours and didn't see another American soldier, because they was gone. They'd pulled out at least an hour before we had, and left us up there. But anyway, we finally started running on some American soldiers, and they didn't. What outfits you were with the K-1924, and they tell us we're second division and whatever whatever division is from, and we don't know where our outfit is. They're scattered all over the hill and after. So we just kept walking, till we found people, and it started getting daylight, and I top a hill, and there's a guy standing on top of the hill, a GI, and he just yelling at the top of his voice, I'm hit, I'm hit, I'm hit. And I walked up to him, and you could tell he was young. He may be 18. And he was standing there with his mouth open, hell, I'm hit. And I take it that he had run up that hill and was gasping for air, and he topped that hill, and a bullet come his way, went inside his mouth, didn't hit a tooth, come out the cheek right there. Slickest little 30 caliber hole right there in that cheek you ever saw. And he just drizzling blood down like that, you know. And I said, that's it? That's where you're hit? Yeah. I kicked him in the ass, flat-booted on the side, about raised him off. I said, get your ass off this hill before you get killed, you know, and you're going to get me killed too. So got him going. Then we went on over the hill and run on to some other troops. And there was a lieutenant involved, and he says, hey, there's a roadblock ahead. You guys want to get together and break this roadblock? You're damn right. So we went up and broke that roadblock and went another 4 or 5 miles, I guess. Kept running into one roadblock after the other. Till daylight, it's daylight, and there was a machine gun after me and Peyton. We were going up a hill this lickety-split, fast as we could run. And there's a machine gun, 30 caliber machine gun, good, several yards over on another hill. Had a zeroed in, and you shoot right under us. Just shoot right under us. We finally get up to the top of the hill, and it happened to be a hill where they buried a man. And in Korea, they level off the peak of the hill, and they level it off. Then they put a ridge around the outside edge of it, about that tall, about that thick. Then they set the guy down, then they cover him up with a pyramid of dirt. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what the top of that hill was. And I can remember when I was on that ledge, and those machine gun bullets come, I dived over that ledge and got over behind that stuff. And Pate was to my right, and he done the same thing over there. And I could see the machine gun bullets hit the ground right under me. So I get positioned, and I see this machine gun over there, and they're just raising hell. So I get my ammunition out, I get but this time I had threw my carbine away and got an M1. And I loaded my M1, put a clip in, and I start shooting these gunners over there because it's about a 200-yard deal. And I'd pick one of those guys off, and they'd bring another one up, and I'd pick him off, and they'd let me. I saw about 5 or 6 of those guys, and finally I realized I was running out of ammunition. So the feed into that machine gun, I knew that it was on the left side of that, and that's where I was, on the left side of that. If I could get a bullet at the right time into that breach, I did some of their ammunition, I could blow up that machine gun. So I had a few rounds left, and I put 2 right in that slot, blew it up, killed that whole bunch, and 4 or 5 guys that was there. Then Pate, for some reason or other, he got on behind this grave, and he come back his other side, and he got me with the leg, and he said, come on, let's get the hell out of here, you're going to get us killed. He dragged me back around behind the deal, and then we took a draw down on the other side. And we get down near the bottom, we run on to a lieutenant. His last name is Nelson. Lieutenant Nelson, this short guy. And he said, you guys looking for guidance? We'll do anything. Let's see if we can get out of here. So he said, come on. Well, that's Coxfield was in front of us. And we get down to the foot of this thing. And there's the lieutenant, there's Coxfield, there's me, Pate, a guy named Ramsey behind me, and then a couple of other guys. And a mortar round comes in from behind us. And it goes right off, goes right down in front of us, right between Lieutenant Nelson's legs. And it hit Coxfield, and it hit me, and I got shrapnel in my leg. Coxfield got shrapnel on both of his legs. And Lieutenant Nelson was dead. We checked him, and he was dead. And I knocked Pate down, concussion knocked me down and I knocked him down. And finally, we checked Lieutenant out and he found him dead. So we saw some girl guys, so we headed over there to try to meet up with them. And Coxfield couldn't walk. He had all the flesh taken off both of his legs, the calves of his legs. So Peyton and I got him between us, and we took him back. We took him across a rice paddy that was covered with a crossfire. You can see the tracer bullets going this way, about that far off the ground. That's the only access we had to get out of there. So Peyton says, we got to give it a try. We got Coxfield between us, arms like that. And we took him across that rice paddy, and we got on the other side. The bullets had been so close to our ears, we couldn't hardly hear anything. You'd be amazed how much they make, how they crack when they go by your head. But we got Coxfield over there and found a medic, turned him over to the medic, and then we started, looked like some friendly troops, looked like South Koreans. So we started walking around there with them, and we walked 100 yards, and some guy come by and said, don't go around that way, guys. GIs are surrendering just around the corner. These are Chinese. Because we didn't know the Chinese uniform from a South Korean uniform, North Korean uniform, what else. So we just turned around and went back the other way. Got off the trail and waited until they cleared up a little bit, and then we got with another guy, an officer, and went to break another roadblock, and we sneaking down this valley, and had two South Korean soldiers with us. So we got close to a entryway on this gully up into an opening, and Lieutenant told a South Korean guy, they said, go up there, listen to those voices, see if they may be friendly troops, see if they're friendly. So these guys went up there, come back, yeah, they're South Koreans. They're speaking they speak Korean, of course Korean, they all sound alike, but they wasn't Korean, they were Chinese as it turned out. We just walked out into this opening, and boy, I'll tell you, when we walked out, there must have been 1,000 Chinese. Rifles, machine guns, everybody. Here we are in a straight line up here, and they drop your weapons. I'm holding that damn one. I had already destroyed the 57. I mean the 37 Resource rifle. I put this in here today, did it, because I figured that we wasn't going to get it out. But they put a BAR man, Brownie automatic weapon, Chinese did over there, one over here. Here we stood here. Old Peyton and I shook hands and said, "It's the end of the line, buddy. You know, it's they just because boil us down. That was the routine." So we shook hands, and as luck would have it, an English-speaking Chinese officer, I guess he was an officer, he'd come out of the wilderness over there, the bushes, and said, she yelled something, an order in Chinese, and the guys with the BARs, they jumped up and run off. So this Chinese come over there and said in English, you guys are prisoners of the Chinese People's Volunteers. The war's over for you. It turned out this guy was a 1949 graduate of the University of Texas. He was speaking Chinese in all my POW camp days. But he saved us. Then we just went over.
He was a Chinese officer?
Chinese officer,
yes.
Yeah, Chinese officer. We went to another spot, and of course I'm bleeding, and they says, sit down there. There was a little old bush or something there. Snow was about that deep, so you just sit down in that damn snow. And you sit there, this is like 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, and you sit there until dark. When you get up, the snow's melted under you, and your ice from your armpits to your knees. That's why you speak the first thing. Nothing to eat, nothing to drink, no treatment, nothing. So I took the old dry bandage, you know. That's all we had was an old dry bandage on your pistol belt, and I took that off and put it on my wound, and it stopped bleeding. It got so cold. I don't think it saved my butt. even after I started walking again, it started bleeding, and then it would get so cold it'd freeze, and I wouldn't bleed. But that's when I became a prisoner of war. Then, after dark, they got us up, took us with their frontline troops. They were on a push south, and they kept us with their frontline troops for about 10 days. We was going south, and because I was wounded, this English-speaking Chinese come in, he said, "You go to that building over there." They put us in a village. That's where the wounded is. You're wounded, but you're still mobile. You can move. You take care of those wounded guys over there. So he said, okay. So I go over there, and that night they bring me a little old bag, had about that much rice in it. So they brought me some water, and I built a fire under a pot there and let it boil, and I put that rice in there. And I didn't know how to cook rice. I didn't know you're just supposed to leave it in there and let it cook until all the water's gone. So I stirred it. Of course, it browned. It burnt, And those guys in there, I'd feed them that burnt rice. Just tastes like shit. Just burned rice and all stuff. And eat the damn stuff, you're going to starve to death. But I stayed with them. We stayed in that village about 3 or 4 days. And I told Peyton, what are we doing?
Were you in South Korea?
Huh? This is in South Korea. Yeah, because they were on a move. And I don't know where they got this, but my military record shows that I was captured in a Cheonggadong, South Korea.
Okay, hold on. Okay.
I've asked people from South Korea. I've asked everybody that I know, and I've looked at maps, and I can't find a Cheonggadong, anywhere in South Korea. But anyway, that's what my paper says, Cheonggadong, South Korea. That was the place I was captured. But where was I? We were kept with front lines. In this village, and I was over with sick and wounded. Some of them had gangrene. There's about 25 or 30 of them in there, felt like dead people. You don't get very hungry in those conditions. But I stayed in there with those guys and tried to get them a drink of water when they needed it, and whatever. But one day, Wong is this name that this Chinese gave us. Wong come over, and he said, "Nordin, we're leaving tonight. We're pulling out tonight." Said, "You're wounded, you can stay here if you want, or you can go." I said, "Which way are we going?" Because Peyton and I had a theory, as long as we're going south, we're staying closer to our troops. The chances of getting rescued are better. So we'd always want to stay together if we was going south. But he would tell me, "No, I don't know." He said, "They're not going to tell you where you go." So I went and talked to Peyton. And they said, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, we've been pretty lucky so far. I think maybe we ought to just stay with it and go take a chance of going south." I said, "Okay." And all this time, I've still got my 45. I told you that I stuck it down next to my body before I was captured. I still had that 45 in next to my body. And it had 3 or 4 rounds in it. I'm not real sure how many. But I still had that. Because I figured if we ever got a chance to escape, it might come in handy, But I still had that. I talked to Peyton, and he said, "You still got the 45? And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Keep it. Just keep it." And that's easy for you to say. But he said, "Let's take a chance and go with them. They may be going south, and we want to stay south if we can." Well, guess what? They didn't go south. And this is after being captured, and probably 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7 or 8 days had gone by. We hadn't had a bite, not one bite to eat, nothing. They offered you no water. You just break a piece of ice out of a frozen rice patty, that had human crap on it, and that's what you survived on, you know. And but anyway, we took a chance. We told we'd go, and but they didn't go. They went north, and over 600 miles farther north. We walked all the way to POW Camp 5. That was I was captured New Year's Day, so this would have been the 7th or 8th, I guess. 7th or 8th or 9th of January, when we headed back north, and we walked every night from 15 to 20 miles till daylight the next day. We had to mark the night to keep our own planes from strafing us, you know. And I got to Camp 5 March the 6th. I was captured New Year's Day, and we got to POW Camp 5 on March the 6th.
Where's POW Camp 5? Where's it located?
Choctaw. Choctaw. P-Y-O-K-D-O-N-G. Puckdong.
Okay.
P-Y-O-K. Puckdong, North Korea. We found out since our recovery people's been over there looking around, none of those names are fit. They were either wrong for our benefit, or they retained them after we left, you know. But none of those names are familiar to anybody. But anyway, Camp 5. And one day I helped bury 43 of our dead in one day. And I weighed about 100 pounds. And those rice sacks, what they get rice in, they're made out of straw. And they're wide, they're about that wide, and they're about that long. And we just punch a hole through the corners and run a pole through them and put 2 sets of those on 4 poles. And these kids, I'm talking 17, 18-year-old kids that just, I don't want to get into that too deep. I can't handle it. But they, skin and bone, because you take your clothes off of them, because we got no clothes except what we got on, and they're all soiled. Everybody's got dysentery, you know, and you can't just go to the toilet, you know. At will, you go in your pants. But I mean, you live with this. You haven't washed your hands in 3 months, you know. And but anyway, we get to Camp 5, and our planes had bombed it just the night before, so we had some dead to carry out of that deal. And then they put you in a Korean hut made out of mud walls, the mud floors, with a little thin mat on it about that big. And it's got 1 door and 1 window. And the window's about that square, and it's covered with paper, rice paper. And the door is made out of little slats, and it's covered with rice paper. So that keeps the wind out. You know, that's what, no heat. The buildings are built, when civilians live there, they build a fire in the end of the thing, and the flue goes under the floor and heats the floor. Smoke goes out the other end. But we didn't have the advantage of having wood or anything to burn, so they were just all cold. You wake up in the morning, and the walls on that thing, about that high, look like a freezer, just frosted from our body heat and our breath. That's what we lived in, and there'd be from anywhere from 26 to 35 men in there, like 8 by 8. You couldn't lay on your back. There wasn't enough room. You had to lay on your side. Everybody like this around the side, feet all out in the middle. And that's the way you got your rest. And it's very common to wake up and have a dead guy on each side of you. But you knew it right away, because when you tried to get a little room, you had to move the whole body, because he didn't have any moving parts left. But that's the way it was. And the first month of that walk, after we headed north toward the POW camp, the first month, or more than that, I guess, February and March, let's see, the rest of January. In February, we just stop along the roadside. They get off the road, sit down over there on the bank in the forest and out of sight. And that's where you stayed all during the daylight hours until night, and then you went back out and started your walk again. But lots of dead guys. Lots of dead guys you carried. Lots of guys you carried until they died, and then you put them down.
Where was the cemetery at the camp?
I'm sorry?
Where did you bury the dead?
Well, after before we got to P.O.W. camp, you just throw them down the side of the road. But up there, there was a mountain behind us, and they get a burial detail of the healthiest Americans that they could find. This guy that could carry a stretcher, help carry a stretcher, and you go up there and they give you a kind of a lax type thing with a wooden handle about that long, and it was the edge of it was about as sharp as your fan had. And you had about a 16-inch frozen ground to cut into to dig a hole. And remember, there wasn't any of us able to do much of that. So we just dig it as far as let everybody run out of gas, rake the frozen clumps out of the way, put a skeleton or two in there, pile that stuff over them as much as you can, go dig another one. But you couldn't dig. You couldn't dig much. You didn't really bury them very much. Just say, God have mercy on her soul. That's all I knew how to say. And then you'd go on and you had to get rid of everybody you had. And after we got into camp, Camp 3 particularly, Camp 5, the Yellow River bordered us on the north, and that's why we got our drinking water. And you break the ice early in the winter, and by the springtime come, you're dipping water out of a hole about that thick. That river freezes about that thick, and you're dipping a bucket of water down there and driving it up. And then you just walk across the ice, and there was a little seashore, as you will. The water had been over it, so it didn't have anything on it. So they give you a little more ease of digging. So you just scratch out a little hole best you could. Put them in there, cover them up best you could. You know, the thing is, we didn't have any choice in the matter. One time I was on work detail out of Camp 3. Let's see, August. When did they take us to Camp 3? Camp 5, August or September of 2001, I guess.
No.
Let's see.
1951?
Can't remember. Might have been two. Might have been August or September of 2002.
No.
I don't mean to.
52?
52, yeah. They moved us, they just, out of nowhere, Chinese come with a list, start calling names, line up over here, and they got a couple hundred, maybe 300. Okay, go to the river, there's barges down the river. Go down and get on a barge. And they took us, in my mind, it would be southwest, toward the Siege Bend. And there'd be a Korean man on the back of that thing, had one of those big old tillers that he'd just tell it back and forth. And you ride down the river till they got to where they wanted to take. And then you get to board and you get off. I think that must have been 52. No, it wasn't 52. It had been 51. It had to be 51, yeah. But they put us in this camp. They called it Camp 3, Changsong. Changsong, Changsong, North Korea. It's right on the Yellow River. I mean the backwater. I'm saying the Yellow River, but it's the backwater of the Yellow River. But that's where we stayed. And there was already a few guys there. And they were reasonably healthy compared to us. So we had hope that maybe the food might get a little better. And it did a little. But, by winter '52, Chairman Mao, you know Chairman Mao, China, head man in China. Then they fellas out, they fall down and speak Chinese to you till you freeze to death, because it's got to be interpreted. But anyway, Chairman Mao come out called easy treatment. Easy, what do they call it? Easy treatment policy. Yeah, easy treatment policy. All you want to eat. All you want to eat. Whoa, that sounds promising, you know. So here they come. Well, in Oklahoma we call it Milo. We call it high gear. But actually the legal name now is Milo. And they grew it up here by the billions of tons, you know. But they started bringing in Milo. Yeah. And of course they steam it just like they do rice. Just put it in those big pots, build a fire under it and boil it till all the water's gone. And it's softer. It's and sure enough, they give you all you want to eat. All of it. Within 10 days, I would say, my arms were like that. From my tailbone out here, I had a belly. I looked like a pregnant pygmy, about that big. And I could put my butt down and give it a couple of clicks of elevation like shit from across the street. I mean, that stuff come through you like this. Boy, I tell you. But at least he's full. Yeah. He was full. And they gave us that pretty much about a year, I guess.
Now, how was the food in the prison camp?
What?
How was the food in the prison camp?
In prison?
Yeah.
That's what prison. That was prison.
No, you said camp 5.
Yeah, 5.
What did they feed you?
That's right. They didn't. Well, over there, we had about the same thing that we had on a road march. It was cracked corn. Mm-hmm. You've been in Oklahoma. You know, if you go, we called it chops when we lived on the farm. It takes the old corn, runs through a little grinder, and it busts up the grains. They call it chops. We feed the chickens. It's easy for chickens to eat. And that's what we had. And the first food we got, even on a road march, they give us a little bowl about 3 ounces. And they just give you about that hard corn, a little bowl full of that every day. And that's all you had. That's all you had. And of course, you had bloody dysentery and everything else, but then, so everything come out was just like it went in. And that's what we lived on until we got to Camp 5. And then they started having millet. They called it millet. It's like sugarcane seeds. And they even had some of that kind of stuff. But millet, like you feed birdseed. And they have that. And that was a little bit easier to digest, I think. But it still didn't give you enough strength to, most guys couldn't get enough strength to get out of their rooms to go to the latrine. They dug latrines, first to go. But you couldn't get out and walk 20 yards. You didn't have the strength. And they just pick out the healthiest guys that they could find to carry those stretchers, because the Chinese didn't want to carry those dead guys around, And at one point at Camp 5, the Chinese turned us over to the North Korean Army. The North Korean Army. And really, they were just a little bit easier to get along with than the Chinese. The Chinese used emotional torture. The North Koreans didn't. They put up a sign in camp, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. Violators will be shot. They only killed 3 or 4 guys. They didn't violate any of those rules. But the Chinese, you put the same stuff up there, they catch a guy doing it. The first thing you had to do is sit down, write out a confession. I stole this or I done that against the people, and I'm sorry I did that, and I'll never steal against the people anymore, and all that kind of bullshit, you know. And then they had what we call holes in the ground. They dug holes in the ground and had made a wooden door to put on it, like a storm cellar door like that, and it'd be big enough for one or two guys, pitch black, and they'd put you in there and send you to 10 days in the dark. You wouldn't see daylight for 10 days or 10 days, 3 weeks, whatever they'd put you in there for. And they wouldn't get you anything to eat, give you about a cup of water every day. You know, that's all you got. But just, the North Koreans didn't last very long. They took them back. But on the road march one time, the Chinese turned us over to the North Koreans, only it was the North Korean police, not one of the military. And a little guy, really short guy, of course they're all little short guys, but he called himself a tiger. He called himself a tiger. And the day, I remember the day he took us over, it was still daylight before we started our march. He said, I killed 1 man, 1 mile. I killed 1 man, 1 mile. Well, at night you'd be walking along in this single file, and he'd stop by the side, and he carried a little, I would think about a 32 caliber automatic pistol on his side, and he just pulled it out like that on the line. Take it in the temple to the first guy he could reach, he'd shoot him, kill him. He'd fall off and dead. And he'd do that every night. He'd kill a guy every night, you know, and you never knew when your turn was coming, because you just in line like everybody else, and you never knew where he was going to stop. And Chinese finally took us back away from him before we got up to Camp 5. I can't remember the date or anything. But after the war was over, we found out the American Army tried to trade 4 North Korean generals that they'd captured for that guy. They wanted him. They wanted him bad. They wanted to try him in American courts for pure murder. He probably killed 30 or 40 himself, you know. And but that's when you're in enemy hands, you live according to their wishes, like it or not. But there's lots of wild stories.
What's your worst memory of the prison camp?
My first what?
What's your worst memory of the prison camp?
Of the
prison camp. Your worst memory of the prison camp?
Oh, bad. You know, John, to get to Camp 5 is ragged, is run down, is bombed out as it looked. It was welcome, because that meant an end of an all-night march. You know, because every night, you had to face it. At least you'd be where you could sit down. You might freeze to death where you sit, but because you didn't know at first whether you was going to get the building or not, you know. And then the way they piled us in there, and it was just like being in a deep freeze. And the body lice were so bad. You could sit in there, you see a man sitting on this side, you can see his hair crawling, moving. Bed bugs, cheech bugs were so plentiful that the frost on the walls we used to stay at, and those, every day at daylight, those bed bugs start coming up, going up that wall. We sitting there pushing, kill them with your thumbs. It looked like that wall had been painted from there down with blood, our blood, all of those walls. It sounds ridiculous, but take my word for it, buddy. You'll find a lot of POWs tell you the same thing. And it stink. What's the stink? You haven't wiped your ass in 3 months. from January the 1st to March the 6th. On the trail at night you're walking, if you gotta take a crap, I kept my fatigues one button up here. And you don't stop. You get the urge, you just pull your pants down and pull your ass off to the side and give it a squirt. Pull the pants back up. It's cold, man. It's 40 degrees outside. You get them up as quick as you can, you know. A little funny story. Maybe 2 or 3 days before we got to Camp 5. Had to go. They had got to the point to where they were putting us in villages that had been vacated rather than hiding us in the woods. And in this village that morning, and we was like 1 or 2 days away from the POW camp. We didn't know it, but it turned out to be. And I had to take a leak one night, and the rule was you open the door, yell at the guard. I forget what the Korean word was. Tell him you got to take a leak. Okay, you come out. You come out, and the latrine was back off up the side of the hill there, and it was just where the Koreans go, I guess. And you go up there, and on the way up, I got a little fart. On the way up there, I see what I think is a honeycomb. You know, a box for honeybees. Gee, that looks like it. And I'm talking, you talking about a guy that's starving to death hungry here, you know. That looked like a damn honey box. On the way back, it was still dusky dark, and I could see the guard was quite a ways away. So I went over there, I kicked that thing over, and it was full of bees, honey. Man, I got down there, had a field jacket on, there were no side pockets. I just started digging that stuff out, sticking it in my side pocket. I filled 2 side pockets on my field jacket full of that honey. Frozen bees and all. You know, I took it, the beehive, everything was going in there. Because I didn't have a lot of time. I had to set things back up and get going. But when I got back to the room, I had 2 bulging pockets full of honey. And Pate, my buddy, was on this side of me. And how'd it go? And I said, I think it went pretty good. He says, did you get anything? I said, stick your hand in that right field jacket pocket. He said, what the hell is that? I said, that's honey, buddy. That's raw honey. He said, so that's the way we eat that honey, with the old turkey hands. Man, I'll tell you. And that field jacket was never the same after that, but there wasn't any honey left. I'll tell you the truth, boy. We ate every smidgen, licked the inside of those pockets. Boy, boy, boy.
How were the guards? How were the guards in the camp?
Oh, well, in Camp 5, they had at least a battalion. Because there was a road come through that camp, see, and they had a guard post at each end where the traffic. I mean, there's a lot of military traffic go through there, because they had to clear those guard posts, you know, because if a military truck come through there and he come through one post, a guy could actually jump on it somewhere, because it didn't go very fast, the old Russian trucks. But there was not many actual guards moving around in the camp. They would, during the daytime, you may see 5 or 6, you know, and maybe he had business at headquarters or something, and he'd go by and give a message or whatever. But I would say in a day's time in Camp 5, you may see 10 to 12 guards. And after you got over to Camp 3, you may see 4 or 5. It was at the terrain, everything was so different than that. But you didn't see very many. And we had more World War II Chinese in Camp 2. When one guy was really a nice guy. Spoke English, he'd learned from GIs in China in World War II, and was just an out-and-out nice guy. And you could just about get anything that you saw that going to benefit you. You could just pretty well take it in front of him. He wouldn't say anything. He's just an all-around nice guy. But the camp commander almost shot me in the foot one time. One of our guys, he'd been on sentenced to the hole for, I don't know, 45 days or so. He'd gone stir crazy. He's just crazy. He just, when they let him out, he didn't know, coming here from Second. And he immediately was running around in the camp, yelling and screaming, and I'm leaving and all this stuff. And he headed toward the gate where one of the guard shacks was. And of course the guards got the bayonets pointed up in his vital organs. And finally he said they'd cuss him and stuff. And they finally drug him up to the Chinese headquarters. And because I knew the camp commander, I had talked to him through an interpreter, and so that's the part I didn't mention. But I was kind of a different deal, and I was kind of a. Let's see. I had a story in the magazine. When I come back, I'll give you a copy of it. That's me. Mm-hmm. That's me at the court-martial of Jim Gallagher. I was a prosecution witness in New York. I was up there a month. That's Gallagher. Let's see what is that Pete? I think it's Pete. Look at these pictures here.
The court-martial Gallagher?
Gallagher, James Gallagher.
Well, what did he do?
He was charged with 3 counts of unpremeditated murder. Collaboration, informing, and stuff like that. But his main counts were 3 counts of unpremeditated murder. He was a collaborator from the day he was captured. He lived in Brooklyn. Big blonde-headed kid. Always ate better than anybody. Could have whipped any 10 of us because of his strength. And these huts that we lived, these green huts, they had quite a lot of hangover because they're straw roofs, quite a lot of hangover. And farmers had pegs along right under the, like people have. And they'd hang up their pepper to dry or their garlic, and all that sort of stuff. Well, there was things that, old Gallagher come in on 3 occasions, and maybe the guy had just shit himself, and it didn't smell good, and he just picked the guy up, and he didn't weigh 80, 90 pounds, and it's 40 below zero outside with a 40-mile-an-hour north wind. He'd take him out there and hang him up on one of those stakes. Well, he freezed to death in 20 minutes. Had 3 counts of that, unpremeditated murder. He didn't plan it, it just happened. Well, he was convicted of 2 of the 3 counts of unpremeditated murder. And I had worked my way into Chinese headquarters for several obvious reasons, to get to do some good for our side. And I knew who was ratting and who wasn't ratting and all that sort of stuff.
Chinese headquarters in the camp?
Chinese headquarters camp. Yeah.
How'd you work yourself into the headquarters?
Sorry?
How'd you get in the headquarters? How'd you work in get in there?
Well, you get their confidence. You get their confidence. I didn't mention this, but this is the first time in our history that an enemy tried to indoctrinate their prisoners of war with their form of government. We were brainwashed. You've heard that term, haven't you, many times? We were brainwashed. We were taught the socialist system. And you wasn't just taught it. You discussed it, and you listened to it in Chinese, you listened to it in English, you listened to it any way you could stand it, tolerate it. Then you went off in a group and you had to discuss it among yourselves. And there was guys, believe it or not, American soldiers, that would rat on you for a piece of candy. Anything to put in your mouth. Anything. Well, we wanted to know who did it. Pate and I, Sergeant Pate. He was my squad leader on mine. So we got together one night, and they were writing atrocity articles for the Chinese. They'd write an article that said that when I was on line, I run into a South Korean woman. She was very big, pregnant, and I stuck my bayonet up her and gutted her, cut the head off the baby. He's writing those kind of articles for favors. Chinese giving favors, because they're sending those from POW camp in North Korea to Hong Kong, Peking, not Peking, China, then Beijing. He's coming back to New York, was in the New York Daily Worker and the San Francisco Communist paper here in the United States. And we figured we ought to try to stop that if we could. And the best way to stop it was to see it, find out about it before it gets out of camp. So we figured the logical way to do it was to get somebody inside the Chinese camp. Well, there was another guy involved. His last name was Fortune, David Fortune. And good old boy, good soldier. Mean as a junkyard dog. But he had a temper like that. He'd go off his handle in a minute and get us all killed. He couldn't control his temper. You know, so I told Pete, I said, we can't have Fortune. We just cannot have time. Because if they find out about us, we're dead ducks. No question. You know, quick. And I'm afraid Dave, as good and honest as he is, he can't control himself. And Pete says, I sure as hell ain't gonna try it. Because he said, I want to be the enforcer. And he's the guy that loved to kill people. This guy Pete right there. My buddy Pete. It's Sergeant Pete. That's Gallagher, and that's Pete. Yeah, Pete. Yeah. But anyway, we decided that I would be the logical one. And if I got caught, I at least wouldn't rat him out. So I started believing their instructors, their teachings, their daily. They had 3 months study cycles and 3 months work cycles. We'd go out in the mountains and cut logs for them and stuff. But these classes would be in the wintertime. You sit out on the frozen ground, listen to a Chinese read a story to you, then the English American had to interpret it. You sit there and freeze yourself to death, listen to that stuff. Then, after that, you had to get off in groups of about 10, 15 guys and discuss what you learned. I had to be the star. I had to learn. And yet not learn. You know what I mean? Yes. I couldn't lose control of my wits. So doing that, it took a while, but the Chinese had confidence in me and asked me if I would be willing to do some work for them in their headquarters, which is exactly where I wanted to be. And I'd steal the stuff out. My first assignment was reading those articles. And really the derogatory ones and the ones that would be bad for this country, I'd just steal them. And Pete and I had a secret place to hide them. I'd hide them outside, and at nighttime he'd get them, read them. Then he and his squad, or maybe one or two of his squad, he'd go get the guy that wrote it. And the first time, he just got talking to. Now, we know you're doing this. You're the guy. We don't want to find another one on you. If we find another one, he got the little shit beat out of him. I mean, they beat him till he just almost dead. And that's why that bothered me a lot. I was afraid we'd kill one. And I told Peter going in, I said, there's one thing we cannot do, buddy. We cannot kill another American. I don't care what he does. We are not justified in killing another American. We can't do it. That's just pure cold murder. And we could tell all kinds of stories, how bad he was and stuff. That cut no ice. He's American, and he's an American soldier. We can't kill him. So always keep that in mind when you're beating on him. And I worried about pain on that, but thank goodness he kept his control. And we broke up their study system. We literally broke it up. It got to the point that there are 250 guys in Camp 3, and we'd all be on we call it a parade ground, out there sitting on the ground, listening to those lectures. And Pate could nod his head to a guy, the other guy nod his head. About 3 or 4 guys, all 250 get up to the same time and walk off. Chinese went crazy. 1 or 2 men get up and do that, they shoot you. But how can you shoot the whole damn bunch? And one said, why did they do that? You know, they give me back to headquarters. I don't know, they're these mixed up guys and stuff, and they just trying to do something and make themselves feel good and stuff, you know, and lie. Tell them anything they want to, it'll change the subject. But I got by with it the whole time, and we got it to where they did quit getting lectures. They quit asking for articles to send to the papers, all that sort of stuff, you know. And when I left, you know, this is the first time in our history that we had 21 people that didn't come back home from that war. Decided to stay with Chinese. Had you heard about that? Yeah, the 21 defectors. Yeah, all of them are back except one, James Venters. And he was my biggest surprise because he was a World War II veteran and fought in World War II, and his parents were let's see, they were from the Greek ancestry, and they come over with the Greeks, and his family worked in the coal mines back in Virginia and all that sort of stuff. And the Chinese told him how they were what do you call it? Like the blacks, you were discriminated against. All their life, they're discriminated against. And they convinced that guy. And I told him, I said, Greek, we call him Greek. I said, Greek, don't buy that bullshit. Don't buy that bullshit. You know, I said, you've been in America. Well, I know my family was discriminated against at times, you know. My grandfather and my grandmother and those people. And it's wrong, and they're right about it, and all this sort of stuff. I said, man, don't buy that. But he did, and he stayed. He's the only one still there. He's the only one still there.
How long were you a prisoner?
I'm sorry?
How long were you a prisoner?
31 months, 23 days. 31 months and 23 days. If you get the calendar like I did, that equals 966 days.
966 days.
966 days. And you know why I counted it? After we come home, a year or so after we come home, our generous government decided that since they didn't have to feed us all the time we was prisoner, they'd give us a POW payouts, $2.50 a day. I counted the damn calendars. I had 966 days. And the first time they paid me for 100 days short. I called to Washington and I said, I can prove it. You know, so I got my other 100 days.
Yeah.
But it's just...
Tell me about being released.
Huh?
Tell me about being released. Tell me about being released.
Oh, well, see, when we got back on ship to come home.
No. From North Korea, what'd you do in North Korea?
When we left North Korea, they put us on trucks, and they drove us back down.
Okay, how were you notified you're being released?
Oh, well, they told us, the Chinese. Okay. Chinese told us. Well, we knew there'd been some change. We knew there'd been change. Okay. Because all of a sudden, are you familiar with soju? White lightning? They call it soju. It's made out of rice. It's white. it'll kick the crap out of you. I took a little sip of it once. This bad stuff. But anyway, about a month before they told us, they said there was been improvements in negotiations at Parmesan. You know, things getting better. And they said, maybe we go home soon. Well, about a month later, they just called us all together and said, our armistice has been signed. You be going home soon, but it's a delay because the International Red Cross has got to come and inspect all these POW camps. International Red Cross. The Chinese didn't even recognize the Red Cross. You know, in World War II, the Red Cross could drop food packages into the German POW camps so the prisoners would have something to eat. Chinese wouldn't allow it. We don't recognize it. The International Red Cross don't recognize us. We don't recognize them. See? All that stuff. But all of a sudden, the International Red Cross got enough. I said, man, I want to go home. And what they do, they bring you a little brown sack, and it's got a wooden handled toothbrush. It's got a comb about that long. It's got a little toothpaste about that long. It had 4 cigarettes and a little book of matches, and that was about it. That's about it. And we waited 3 weeks in a POW camp for them to show up. Boy, they didn't get a very warm welcome, I'll tell you that. Because the Chinese by that time had already told us the armistice had been signed and the Red Cross was going to come and inspect and stuff like that. But you had a bunch of mad soldiers. We just want to get home, you know. And,
so you got on the trucks, and where'd you go?
What?
You got on the trucks, and where did you go?
Went headed south, or over those mountainous roads, you know, around like this. It took all day long for a truck to drive us to Freedom Village, they call it Parmesan, all day long. And they pulled in there, and most of us had stripped down to our white underwear. We threw the, you know, the white stuff that they give us to wear. We threw that off before we even got. But one time after we got into the American zone, we threw that stuff away. We just wanted to see some Americans, and they pulled up, backed the truck up to this fence where the Freedom Village, where Parmesan, the city started, and there was all kinds of Army officers, every rank that you can think of, from a second lieutenant to a brigadier general. You know, I think I saw a couple of 2 or 3-star generals, and they had benches set up, and you come through there. Oh, let me tell you, I didn't get paid from the time I was called back in until I got to Incheon when I was released. You know, they pay you in military script. You know, it's not American money, because if you had any American money on you, and the Americans caught you before you was captured, it'd be a pretty good penalty, because Chinese are crazy for American dollars. But anyway, the 2nd Infantry Division, they got paid one time when in the combat zone, and we knew about it because their payroll people had got hit, and they paid in military script. And those military script, little dollar bills about that big, about that long, I guess. And they come in $1, $5, $10, and $20 size. And then some ones, $1. And when we come through there, we was trying to rescue them guys. We come through there, that stuff was knee deep. Because they just tore the bags out, tore ripped open, and people would run through it, all that sort of stuff. Excuse me, I got gas, buddy. I got gas. And there's people kicking that money all around. A lot of guys just stuffed their clothes full of it. And then they got captured. Well, when they got to POW camp, they used it to play poker with. They made some cards. Played poker and all sorts of stuff. But when we got back to enemy hands, some of those guys had actually sold some of the better food that they were given for that military script. They wanted the script because they wanted to be rich when they got back home. Can you believe that? Excuse me, buddy, I'm loaded up with gas. But anyway, when we got back in American hands, where the speaker, the guy on the speakerphone says, some of you men have lots of military script. We are authorized to replace $200 worth. So if you've got more than $200 worth, you might as well divide it up among somebody else. Let them do it, you know. So there's those guys out there. I had one piece for a dollar one, I think, that I had left. One piece of it is all I had. Because I used mine. If somebody offered to sell me a bite of food for military script, I bought it. I was more interested in staying alive, you know. And I was looking out for number one. I was captured. I had a Lord Elgin wristwatch. Yeah, when I was captured, I had broke the crystal. I was captured. So I wrapped it up in a toilet paper, and I had it on my inside OD shirt pocket down next to my body. When I was captured, they didn't find it. Well, after I got to Camp 3, one of the guards told me there's a Korean man down to Gate 1 that is looking for jewelry, and he'll trade for it. Of course, you know, nobody had cigarettes. So I went down there, talked to him. He said, "What do you got?" And I said, "I got a Lord Elgin wristwatch." And this old Korean man says, through an interpreter, he says, "Cigarettes. I give you cigarettes." He said, "I'll give you 2 cartons, tailor-made cigarettes. 2 cartons, 20 packs, 20 pack cigarettes." And I said, "Yeah, there's not enough. Okay, I'll give you 21 packs. Well, I finally got it up to 23, 24. I said, okay. But he didn't have the other 3 or 4 packs with him. He said, "I'll bring those back," but he didn't come back. I got two packs. Well, I smoked. But cigarettes were so precious in that deal. And those guys that had that military script wanted them so bad, I charged them $10 per cigarette for those cigarettes. And I took the $10 and bought food. That guy was, and they had a menu. You could buy a finger of garlic, not a whole pot, a finger of garlic. You could buy a finger of garlic for $25 in military script. You could get a GI spoonful of sugar for $50, military script. And we'd get a little of that stuff, but guys would give it up for that damn phony money because they was going to be rich when they got back. I was just getting worried about getting back. I sold every one of those daggum cigarettes. And the guys in my squad, I wouldn't sell them to them. I'd give them, well, we start a day, and today you start the cigarette. You light it, you take 3 puffs. You give it to him, 3. He give it to him, 3. He give it to them, 3. Pass it on. Tomorrow, he starts it, goes it around like that. Once in a while, the Chinese would give me a cigarette or 2 for working in the office. I'd bring them back to my squad. I'll never use one single thing they ever give me for myself. If I got 2 or 3 pieces of candy, you come back to my squad. I passed that. I hope to die sitting in this chair. I never took one iota of anything for myself because I felt that would be a traitor's trick.
Now tell me about coming home.
I'm sorry.
Tell me about coming home.
Coming home. Oh yeah. Got on the ship. And the first morning on the ship, out of Japan, we had to go to a meeting downstairs, down below deck, and had to go to a psychiatrist. I said, you know, I was feeling pretty good. I'd already been to a PX, you know. I'd bought a camera. I bought cigarettes. I thought it was pretty free as it was. But this psychiatrist says, "You have no idea what the emotional shock's going to be when you get to San Francisco and see your family for the first time. He said, you're liable to just go bonkers. And we got to try to get you ready for that. So that was a 4-hour deal every day for 18 days all the way across. And they didn't get it all done either, buddy, I'll tell you. But then after that, he spent the rest of the day with the CID, there's military intelligence. What did you do? What did you do? And all this sort of stuff. Well, I didn't dare tell them about this. Who's going to believe this bullshit shit? Who's going to believe this? I'd lost track of Pate because he'd been sentenced to a Korean jail. And I heard at one point that they'd killed him, you know, and that Wong told me that they'd killed him. But it happened to be a different Pate. But I said, ain't nobody going to believe this bullshit, you know. So I just didn't say anything. And they'd ask me, everything is just pretty normal. And, excuse me, but I'm sorry I'm doing that. But I was meeting, one morning I went in and I was meeting with, there was an FBI guy there as well, a guy in a suit. And I said, we got a new med. Yeah, it's the FBI guy. He wants in on this story. And he says, you're not telling us everything that you know, are you? I said, well, I'm trying to. I'm trying to tell you everything that I know might be of any use. And he said, do you know Lloyd Pate? I said, man, do I? I said, you know where he is? And he said, he's one ship ahead of you. On the way to San Francisco. And he'd been telling us a story that's a little bit hard to digest. And I said, what's he telling you? He said, that's not the way it works. He said, I'm here to tell you that what you tell us, if it don't jive with what he tells you, or what he's told us, you're in a lot of trouble. He said, you're just in a hell of a lot of trouble. And I said, yeah, I expected that. But I hope when you hear the facts, it'll change. So from then on, I met with the FBI and a CID guy, and that's a criminal intelligence and a military intelligence, all the way to San Francisco. And by the time I got there, because Wong, see, he asked me if I wanted to be one of the number 22 of those guys that stayed. And when those people ask you a question, you don't know, is this really a question? Or do I have a choice here, you know? And I said, no, I don't want to go. And he said, why not? And I said, because what I've learned here, I want to take back to States. That's where they need it. They don't need me in China. You guys got that covered. Well, I told the FBI guy that. He said, a little risky, isn't it? And I said, yeah, it is. But he says, okay, I got a question for you. He said, when you get home, I told him, I said, Wong told me that I'll be contacted if I come on home. And I said, why? I said, I think I will be. And that FBI guy says, well, do you want to continue with similar proceedings? I said, if it helps my country, you're damn right. I'm all for it. Well, when I got to Muskogee, I had an FBI contact there, had one here in Tulsa waiting on me. Because I had been told that socialist cells would be contacting me. Well, then the Gallagher court-martial thing come up, and I gave a 157-page deposition on Gallagher because I had first-hand information for him talking to the Chinese. Mm-hmm. I'd be in there listening, stuff like that. But I'm not taking away too much of your time, John. But anyway, I had books waiting for me at my mother's house in Muskogee from Peking, China, when I got to Muskogee, back from San Francisco.
When you first saw the Golden Gate Bridge, Golden Gate Bridge, what'd you think?
Boy, I thought that was heaven. I remembered going under it, leaving, you know, and I remembered coming back. I thought that was the prettiest thing I ever saw in my life.
When'd you get your discharge?
I'm sorry?
When'd you get your discharge?
I was discharged October the 23rd, 1953.
1953.
Yeah, Fort Sill.
Would you join the Army again?
Physically, if I was physically fit, you bet. Yes, I would.
Did you say your mother got your diploma in high school for you?
No, I got it after I got back.
Did you say your mother walked across the stage?
No, my mother.
Okay.
No.
I'd like to do a word association. I'll give you some words and you give me your reaction.
Okay, I'll try.
The first one is basic training.
Basic training was tough, but good. I liked it. I enjoyed it. It's hard work.
Camp Chaffee.
Camp Chaffee? I love Camp Chaffee. I really like Camp Chaffee. I like the Arkansas mountains down there. We hike. We took our hikes. We took our 20-mile marches, And I could take a 20-mile mark at Camp Chaffee, Arkansas, and come back, never take a drink of water. I showed my recruits how tough I was.
Troop ship.
Huh?
Troop ship.
Tripped. Oh, well, the one to go on was hell, living hell. Going to Japan on that ship with that stormy weather, that was nothing but pure hell. I tell you. Now coming back was great, smooth seeing all the way, just great. Your surroundings weren't all that great. You still took a couple of decks below water level, but at least it's dry, But I like that ship coming home, but going over there was the pits.
Korea.
The hellhole of the world. The hellhole of the world. That's what it is.
Camp 5.
Camp 5 is even worse. It was actually at Camp 5, I had the thought that I never thought I would ever have. If I had have known what it was going to be like at Camp 5, I would have forced my captors to kill me. I actually thought those thoughts, it was that bad, it was that much like hell, that I would have forced them to kill me.
Harry Truman.
I didn't like the way he caused the long, drawn-out negotiation procedures over what? Enemy troops having the option of staying with it where they are
Finished.
or coming back home.
We're almost finished.
I think he's about done. Yeah.
He's about done? Are you done?
Yeah, he's about done. Harry Truman, see, Sigmund Rhee, President of South Korea, he asked Truman, we had 150,000 Chinese and North Korean prisoners down at Koji Island, off that south end of it. A lot of them wanted to stay. They didn't want to come back. They didn't want to go home. Sigmund Rhee wanted to keep them in South Korea. Keep them. He told Harry Truman, let your people stay if they want to stay. Go if you want to go. That's what brought it up. That delayed the negotiations 2 years. So I hated him for that. Yeah. But when MacArthur fired him, I applauded him for that. Because you cannot let a general run your government.
I was going to ask. Douglas MacArthur.
Who?
Douglas MacArthur.
I loved him. I loved Doug MacArthur.
Okay.
I'd fight for him again.
Dwight Eisenhower.
Better yet. Better yet.
How do you want to be remembered?
I think just a good old boy. Don't think I don't tell you. I just try to be a good old boy. I've got tons of friends, female and male. I'm not a womanizer. This has been the only woman in my life since I remarried 73 plus years ago. I divorced my first wife. I got back to Muskogee, I don't know, 8th of September, and I divorced her the 16th. She moved on with her life. She'd been lived with I don't know how many guys, and you don't have to be an idiot. You read her letters. I got some letters from her, and you read between the lines, you know what's going on. And she met me in San Francisco as well. My mother my sister and her husband and their 3 kids and my my wife met me in San Francisco. And my mother, the day she died, will swear to you when I come down the raft, or what do you call that thing?
The ramp.
Yeah, the ramp to get off that. I was so drunk I couldn't hardly stand up. I was so emotionally overcome that I hardly even remember it happening. And that's what that psychiatrist told me. And I didn't believe a word he said. I said, ah, bull crap. I'm with my Americans now. I'm happy, you know. But, and I didn't really realize the emotional condition I was in when I was out there.
Sir, this is an excellent interview.
This
is an excellent interview.
Excellent energy.
Interview. I want to thank you for your service and thank you for the interview.
I don't know. I hope you can get some good out of it or something.
Okay, and again, this is, my name is Joe Todd. This is September 19th, 2017. This has been an interview with Cletys Nordin in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Nordin, Nordin.
Yes, thank you.
Of Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yes.
Thank you, John.
Oh.